What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Carmen Vitali here for another preview episode, week 13. It is flying by. We got a full schedule here for you on this show. Last couple of weeks, been, 4 teams on a bye, 6 teams on a bye. Not this week. It's holiday season, and you knew that Roger Goodell and the powers that be had to give us as much football as possible this week. So we got a lot of stuff. We got 3 Thanksgiving Day games. We got a Black Friday game. And then, of course, the regular Sunday and Monday schedule as well. Carmen, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just saying how my head's a little foggy, cloudy. It's that time of year. Seasons are changing. Allergies are up. Sickness is up. I don't know. But we're remote, so it doesn't matter.
We're powering through, though. We're powering
through.
That's what we got to do. It is true. I can't remember. What was it, 4 or 5 weeks? Last time we had like a full slate, no bye weeks.
I think, what was it, week 8? I think it was week 8 was the one that had no bye weeks. Just like randomly.
The NFL's got to make sure that we're still in shape. They got to make sure that the cardio's still up, that we're good to go here. We're going to have a jam-packed 2+ hours, depending on how long it takes us to preview all these games. You guys can preview them with us. Appreciate you tuning into the show live and getting in on the chat. By the way, if you guys don't have a PFF Plus subscription, now is the time to do it. I know they say that every show, but I truly mean it right now, because if you go to pff.com and you get a new account, 35% off, baby. Score 35. That's the promo code to get you 35% off a PFF Plus subscription. It's not just for following along on this show, although that's a great way that you can use your PFF Plus subscription. It's also the mock draft simulator, the fully unlocked mock draft simulator. A lot of the fantasy football tools to help you win your league. We're getting into playoff time, so to help you win that league. And then when we get into the NFL offseason as well, the free agency tracker, all the valuation, all that good stuff. Go get an account if you don't have one right now. Score 35. Get you 35% off for that. All right, let's dig into these Thanksgiving games. Yeah. As they often do, the NFC North dominates things, and that's where we're starting here today, talking about Bears at Lions. The Bears coming off back-to-back losses. The Lions, one of the best teams in the NFL, sitting here at 10-1, projected to have the number 1 seed in the NFC. But the Bears have been playing a little bit better as of late, especially on the offensive side of the football since Thomas Brown has taken over as offensive coordinator. So, Carmen, as we often do, always do, I should say, to start previewing these games, your matchup that matters. What are we looking for in this one?
I'm really excited. We have at least one NFC North game, or game between 2 NFC North teams from now until the rest of the season, or until the end of the regular season. So,
and it's basically just Chicago, right? Basically just Chicago running the toughest gauntlet of all time here.
Incredibly. I think earlier in the season, or before the season started, you were like, okay, Caleb's going to get a chance to really, there was a sweet spot in the season before their bye, and maybe get some wins there before there's, an absolute gauntlet, which is when you want a young quarterback to have to play the toughest teams, is towards the back end of his first season, if he's going to have to do it. But with the shakeups that happened in Chicago, it kind of felt like Caleb was starting from square one a couple weeks ago. But to Thomas Brown's credit, like you alluded to, he made some drastic changes to this offense while sticking within the same installed playbook. And Caleb Williams has been the beneficiary of that. There's been so much more motion as far as the pre-snap looks. Yep. It's giving Caleb Williams so much more information when it comes to what the coverage he's facing, giving him a leg up on the defense, kind of manipulating the safeties, all that kind of stuff that motion can help you do. We haven't seen as much of an uptick in play action as I think I would probably like to eventually see, but that's also something that's not necessarily inherent for young quarterbacks. Turning your back to the defense, having to reset and then read again, is something that kind of it's an acquired taste for quarterbacks. And while it can help you mitigate the rush, it's also kind of hard. So I understand that kind of taking a little bit longer. But what you've also seen is Caleb Williams has all season long tried to go for the deep ball, and his average depth of target has routinely been in the top 10 week in and week out. And under Shane Waldron, that didn't quite work. Well, now with Thomas Brown, in the last 2 games, Caleb Williams has been really, really good as far as deep throws goes. Past the sticks in his last 2 games, 77.0 PFF grade, 18 of 33, 297 yards, 1 touchdown, 7 big-time throws. And they're actually working. That's the key factor. So it's Caleb's deep throws, and then against this Lions coverage unit, which we know includes Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, the best safety tandem in the league.
Yeah.
But I think where you can kind of catch Detroit on their heels, especially with the injuries that they're dealing with this week, is on the outside, those outside corners. You have Carlton Davis, who's missed the last 2 days of practice. I haven't seen the final injury designation for him and if he's in fact going to play yet. But you have him, you have Terrion Arnold, who is a rookie, very promising in a lot of ways, but also 37 catches allowed for 432 yards, 3 touchdowns allowed, 22 catches for a first down. He's had 5 forced incompletions, and I feel like you see him kind of coming along. But if there is a weakness on this Detroit defense right now, I think you can try to exploit that the numbers, kind of the outside corners, that area of the field. And Caleb Williams has been doing well so far under Thomas Brown in throws like that.
He's just so much more confident, right? It's not like we thought that these throws couldn't exist for him, but he was very hesitant to get to them with Shane Waldron. And, clearly, everything that was going on with DJ Moore, it felt like the vibes were off in Chicago. And anytime that's the case, obviously a young quarterback and a rookie quarterback, it's going to be hard to expect them to feel comfortable putting the ball in harm's way further down the field. And over these last 2 weeks, he has been more willing to do that, which has been a lot of fun to watch. Detroit's a tough team to crack, especially in the secondary, but you're right. If there's anywhere there where they might be a little bit up and down, it might be on the outside. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'll flip to the other side of things, and I'll talk about the Bears coverage unit, because in reality, the talking point over the last 2 weeks has been Caleb has done enough to win the football game, but they haven't. And I'm not saying it's solely on the defense for that, but the defense has been struggling, especially the coverage unit as of late. No Jaquan Brisker, obviously. Kyler Gordon had a really good game last week with a couple of forced incompletions, but everybody else, the rest of the secondary, the rest of the corners, the rest of the safety is really poor. 54.9 overall coverage grade as a team, and that includes Kyler Gordon's elite 91.9 grade. So when you factor that in, man, it just was not a good day at the office for most of the secondary members of the Chicago Bears. And this has kind of been a story this year. They have not been quite the defense they were the year before. It's like we talk about with the Jets. The Jets maybe a little bit better on offense, but they've also taken a step back on defense. And so that complementary factor, it's not quite there. It feels that way for the Bears right now. And so the Bears coverage unit, specifically the corners and the safeties, going up what is the most easily unstoppable offense, it feels like, in the NFL, with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams. And then, of course, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield as well. Ben Johnson, he's just making it look so easy out there. And if you're bad in coverage, even with one player, it feels like you get picked on with this Detroit Lions team, especially. And so you don't want to be in Chicago's situation where you're struggling in a couple of different spots. So to me, that's the big matchup that matters, because if Chicago's coverage doesn't have a little bit of a get-right game, which is a tough assignment to have that, I don't know if they're really going to stand a chance in this one, for as good as the Lions are in this one, obviously being in Detroit. I'll go to my plus factor on the other side of things, because it sort of goes into the offense needing to play better. DeAndre Swift is who I really need to continue to play better, and just this rushing offense overall. With Caleb Williams playing well now, you need to continue to complement that with a good run game. And it feels like it's been a little up and down for Chicago. You've highlighted DeAndre Swift a couple of times here on these previews to say, man, they've got to be able to run the football. And I'm here sort of echoing that sentiment here this week. Caleb is playing well. The best way to continue that progression for him is in the moments where, all right, maybe I don't quite have it in the first or second quarter, I can hand it off and we can still continue to move the ball down the field. I can keep that confidence. So DeAndre Swift's the plus factor for me. Who's the plus factor for you?
Yeah, it kind of goes along with that, though it's not a running back. It's just kind of more attacking the short to intermediate area of the field. And the fact that the Bears might have an opportunity to do that with Alex Anzalone out for the Detroit Lions, I want to see more Cole Kmet. And we've seen his production steadily kind of increase under Thomas Brown and calling those plays and using Cole Kmet as the safety net that he once was earlier in the season for Caleb Williams. I need to see more of that as well, because Cole Kmet can just present so many different kinds of mismatches. And again, can help your offense stay so multiple against a defense that is so good in Detroit. From the defensive line to this, again, that safety tandem that I was talking about before, across all levels, Aaron Glenn just has more than made up for the fact that they lost their best player so early in the season in Aiden Hutchinson. And he's figured out ways to kind of maximize the talent while hiding the holes in this Detroit defense. And I really do think that they are going to kind of take a step back, given that Alex Anzalone isn't in the middle of the field anymore for them. Can you exploit that then with Cole Kmet? Can you keep him, as the safety net for Caleb Williams and keep his confidence up while targeting Cole Kmet? Again, DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. I'm relieved to say it seems like Thomas Brown knows exactly how to use his running back rotation between DeAndre Swift and Rashawn Johnson. That's not something that we saw earlier with Shane Waldron, or we did for like a 3-game stretch, and then all of a sudden he forgot about how to kind of use those two guys. I think the combination of those 3 guys in particular are going to be so important for the Bears offense to stress this Detroit defense as much as they possibly can in as many ways as they possibly can, because we know the inverse of that is true, where Detroit is so good at just stressing Chicago's defense or any defense so well, given the just versatility of all of their players. I want to see the Bears try to go toe-to-toe with that. The Lions are the better team. The Bears are the weirder one. So
I can't argue with you. And I think Lions fans who might be watching this are like, hey, you spent most of the time talking about the Chicago Bears. Well, the reason is because the Lions are easy right now. I mean, they're playing so incredibly well. They understand their identity. You know what you're going to get every single week, and it's a really damn good football team. So a lot of the talk of really any team that we have playing the Detroit Lions is, do they have the matchup?
Do they have a shot?
Right. Can they keep up with Detroit? And I do think that Chicago does.
Yes.
But they got to be better in coverage. They've got to make sure the run game is better. And then, of course, I think Caleb has to continue to play at the level that he has.
And if Lions fans want, more stuff about them, just a shameless plug, I just wrote a very glowing review of Dan Campbell's first 3 years with the Detroit Lions and what that's meant for them, for Detroit, and how everybody has finally wised up to what the Lions have known since Dan Campbell got there, in that they are no longer the laughingstock of the league. They are a juggernaut, and we are all reckoning with that right now. So go check that out if you want to hear really nice things about the Lions. It's also the reason I think the Bears might have a shot in this, because I'm like, of course, the week that I write the glowing things about the Lions, the Bears are going to do something weird.
We do love a shameless plug here on this show, so I'm glad that you got that one in there. That's good. The next Thanksgiving Day game, the middle one, is the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
This game used to mean something. Dang it. And now I guess it does mean something about how high of a draft pick these two teams are going to get. This one could obviously get very ugly. There's no Dak Prescott in this one for the Dallas Cowboys. Kind of looks like there's going to be no Tommy DeVito for the New York Giants. But even if that's the case, Drew Lock's probably better. So maybe that's you're falling upwards with that being the case. But anyways, matchup that matters here in this one. These two teams obviously don't like each other. And let's be real. This might be a draft pick type of a major takeaway when it comes to these teams, but these two coaching staffs kind of coaching for their jobs. And so it's not like these guys are sitting back. They're comfortable just being bad football teams or saying oh yeah, we're developing. Both these guys got to win this football game. And this one on Thanksgiving Day goes a long way into the vibes being correct in your direction. So matchup that matters here. What do you got?
I think it's the most fun one of what could be a really kind of dismal game, and that's Malik Neighbors against these Cowboys corners. They're the Cowboys secondary. Malik Neighbors is, again, just a bright spot for the New York Giants, and no matter who's playing quarterback, that has to be priority number one of getting the ball to Malik Neighbors, getting the ball to your playmaker, and I say playmaker singular because it pretty much is. 12 contested catches, tied for 6th in the league. And that's what makes him so special. That's the one thing you want to isolate about Malik Neighbors is the fact that you can kind of throw him these prayer balls and he's going to come down with them. It's 37 receiving yards gaining, or 37 receptions gaining a first down. That's tied for 9th in the league. 80.2 receiving grade, 79.4 overall grade, top 20, top 10 type of numbers for the rookie. Again, the bright spot on this New York Giants offense. And then what Cowboys corners, 59.4 coverage grade as a unit, which ranks 22nd in the league. So that could be a big area to exploit if you're the New York Giants.
I'm going with Micah Parsons as my sort of matchup that matters. And I could have gone, with him as a plus factor in this one because it's more about him as an individual than the Cowboys defensive line. But I really do feel like he could be a game wrecker in this one. Micah Parsons, 88.3 PFF grade. so far this season, 90 PFF passing grade, which is third best in the NFL. And he's already got 36 pressures, which is tied for 24th despite missing time at the beginning of the season. Parsons has been great since he has been back out there and healthy. And I really think that this could be a takeover type of performance. The Cowboys are sort of down. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, it was really bad. This past week, they get a win. But I think that Parsons is probably looking at this game saying, I got to take this over. Like, I have to take over this football game. Like, if we're going to win, it's probably going to be on the defensive side of things. Not that he doesn't trust the offense. I think he's a team guy. I think he believes in the guys around him. But I really do. I just feel as though Parsons is going to look in the mirror or, stare at his locker before the game and just be like, I got to take this over. Like, I have to be the top type of a player who can really be an X factor and take over these games. Like I know I'm capable of doing. And I think he's going to do it against the Giants, whose offensive line is not only struggling, but it's also, you're going up against a quarterback who, whether it was Tommy DeVito, who we know didn't handle pressure well, as we saw against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week, or it's Drew Lock, who Lock has more years in the NFL, but he's sort of inexperienced because he's come cold off the bench if he's going to be the guy who's in there. So it's different when you say, all right, well, I can plan for pressure, and then there's different types of pressure which Micah Parsons can bring. So to me, the matchup is simply how the New York Giants are going to plan for Micah Parsons, because I really do believe this is an X factor type of a takeover performance that we could be seeing here from Micah Parsons if the Giants can't block it up correctly. So I'm going to go with Micah as my matchup that matters versus the Giants offensive line. What about a plus factor for you?
Yeah, plus factor actually works directly off of that. It's complementary to it, and it is the Giants' offensive line and how they fare against Micah Parsons. Although it's really given the fact that you need to give whoever's under center as much of a chance as possible. That's kind of what this reasoning is born out of. Although I guess if they play put on by Jeezy, Drew Lock should be fine. I don't know. We'll see.
That's probably the X factor. That's honestly probably the X factor.
That's probably the plus factor here.
Yeah.
Is actually put on by Jeezy. If MetLife Stadium knows what's good for it, or is this in Dallas? I forget.
This one's in Dallas. It is
in Dallas. All right, so they're not going to be able to stay far away from that if you're game ops for the Dallas Cowboys. But and to expand upon the impact that Micah Parsons could have, there is a real threat to that, given the fact that the Giants' offensive line has just not been good this year. 65.5 PFF grade overall, that ranks 26th in the league. 58.4 PFF pass blocking grade, which is 27th. And that's where Micah can do the most damage. And that's what's going to really doom this offense, because it's going to render what I talked about in my matchup that matters, Malik Neighbors versus these Cowboys corners, completely moot, given the fact that if you get pressure on an inexperienced quarterback because this offensive line isn't giving you any time, you're never going to get the ball to Malik Neighbors. And I do think that that's kind of what is going to be the biggest kind of swing in this game, is how the Giants' offensive line fares specifically against Micah Parsons. So it's kind of a matchup that matters. It's kind of a plus factor.
Right. I'm gonna stick with the defensive line for my plus factor in this one. Brian Burns, come on, man. Like, this is a game where you could really step up and play well against the Cowboys' offensive tackles. 0 pressures last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that was without Tristan Wirfs. And 0 pressures, a season low 6.7 pass rush win percentage. I mean, it was one of the lowest pass rushing grades that he had in the season, despite having the 4th most pass rushing snaps in a single game this season. I mean, it's just not been effective for Brian Burns, and he needs a big time bounce back game. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is really the only constant on that defensive line, and you draft Kayvon Thibodeau and you trade for Brian Burns, so you don't have to utter those words. You don't have to say, well, only got one guy went off for us today. Your idea is that at least 2 of these players are having fantastic games every single week. And Burns has had good games this season. I don't want to say he hasn't. 2 weeks ago, he had 8 pressures in a single game. But to be shut out the way that he was against the Buccaneers is disappointing for a player that you trade a lot for and that you're paying a lot of money for. And I understand it's a professional league. Those other guys on the other side of things get paid too. But Burns is too talented to have 0 pressures on 30 pass rush snaps in a single game. So Brian Burns needs to be the plus factor here, simply because if the Giants are going to stay close in this one, they got to get after Cooper Rush. They've got to force some turnovers from him. And I think Brian Burns is one of those guys that really has to step up in order to do so. Dolphins taking on the Green Bay Packers as the nightcap for Thanksgiving Day. Matchup that matters. What do we got?
It's got to be Josh Jacobs against this Dolphins run defense. And it's Also due to the fact, so Josh Jacobs, top 5 in most major metrics for running backs. He's got 46 missed tackles forced on runs, which is 4th, and his 48 rushes gaining a first down are tied for 4th. That's wonderful. But what is really awesome about Josh Jacobs and this Green Bay rushing offense is just how incredibly versatile and multiple it is. You look at, especially coming out of the bye, I think that game against Chicago, the Packers ran the you-know-what out of Duo. I don't know if I can swear on this. They ran the shit out of Duo. How?
Yeah, there you go. That works. You can do it.
All right. They ran the shit out of Duo. And then you look at that game last week, and I don't think they ran Duo once. They're drastically changing up their run scheme game by game, which is really stressing defenses and not really allowing them to kind of pick up on the tendencies that they otherwise would. And it's resulting in Josh Jacobs being used multiple ways. Again, that game against Chicago, that was a season high, rather, with the Packers in receiving yards. And that's not something that we had really seen of Josh Jacobs before Green Bay's bye. And now you're kind of just seeing him utilized in so many multiple ways. And you're going against a rushing defense now with the Dolphins that is pretty good. I mean, they've allowed 1,176 rushing yards, which is the 9th fewest, 34 rushes allowing 10 or more yards, and that's tied for 15th, so it's kind of middle of the pack. You have an opportunity to kind of assert yourself on the ground if you're Green Bay. I think so much of what we think about this Green Bay offense is through the air, what Jordan Love has at his disposal as far as receivers go. But when you now factor in Josh Jacobs into that, and the fact that he can be so effective on the ground, and you've got a change up back as well, it's one of those things where what do you do if you're the Dolphins defense? So I really am looking forward to kind of seeing how this run scheme continues to evolve now that Matt LaFleur is just an adjustment wizard, and they're not really like sticking to one scheme. Like it used to be, teams were just like, oh, you're an inside zone team, you're an outside zone team, you're a duo team, all that other stuff. The Green Bay Packers are all of it and none of it at the same time. So I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, the Packers offense built around Josh Jacobs has been great. I mean, like he has been everything that they have wanted him to be since bringing him in. Obviously, when you move on from Aaron Jones, you can't just move on from Aaron Jones for anybody. And obviously, they picked a great guy to bring in and build that rushing attack around, which is fantastic. My matchup that matters is Green Bay's corners, specifically going up against the Miami Dolphins wide receivers, because not only is Miami starting to really hit their groove, right? The first half of last week against the New England Patriots, I know it's the New England Patriots, but when Tua was kept clean, I mean, he was fantastic. He had over 200 yards passing. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. It was great. I mean, Jalen Waddle had an incredible game, the best game that he has had so far this season. Jonnu Smith is playing well. We know Tyreek Hill is a constant threat. When you flip to the other side of things, Green Bay's corners have really struggled this season. When you just look at their cornerback group, they're 25th in total coverage grade amongst those corners. And really, it's if you were to take Jair Alexander out of that equation, because he's the only one who has a coverage grade above 70 on the season. If you take Jair Alexander out, it gets ugly. I mean, they have one of the lowest graded cornerback rooms in the NFL. And I don't know if Jair Alexander is going to play in this game. Right? I mean, like he's on the injury report. It looks like
he does not have a game designation. So Green Bay is fully healthy. So all right. That was what I just saw, according to Marcel. He posted the injury report, Marcel Louis-Jacques, who covers the Dolphins. So I'm going to go double check it right now, but that is what I just saw.
So they desperately need that because, again, without Jair Alexander, they have really been struggling. I mean, Carrington Valentine last week, 31.0 coverage grade, 4 targets, 3 catches, 68 yards allowed. The one incompletion that he had when he was targeted was just a drop. And so it's like, man, they need the rest of the corners need to step up anyways. Even if they have Jair Alexander in this one, which it looks like they will, then the final injury report. It is for the Dolphins. I don't maybe Green Bay isn't in yet because that's what he posted. Okay, that there are no, but like Jair did not practice this whole week, but it was also kind of halfway walkthroughs given the short week, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if Green Bay's is actually out. All that to
Maybe
say,
that's what that is.
the Dolphins have a lot of different ways they can hit you. And the cornerback group just in general really has to elevate itself, because I think we have yet to have a Tyreek Hill has gone nuclear type of a game this season. And this feels as though it could be one of those. Now, obviously, it being in Green Bay is different. People talk about Miami traveling up north in the cold weather and all that stuff. And I don't think it doesn't matter at all. But I also don't think that it's like, oh, okay, well, it's cold weather, that means Miami's going to be terrible. It's somewhere in between. I do think the weather affects that Miami team, but certainly if the corners can't cover in Green Bay, then they've got the firepower and the receivers in the passing game to be able to attack that. So to me, whether Jair Alexander plays or not, Green Bay's corners have got to step up against a really good receiving group for Miami.
As of 2 minutes ago, it came out. So Jair is not playing. And
all right, so he's not playing.
Yeah, they'll be without Edgerrin
that whole
Cooper.
segment was just The Office. Snip, 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 snip.
Yeah, I know. Neither is Edgerrin Cooper or Romeo Doubs for the Green Bay Packers. So yeah, that could very much sway what happens.
Jair not playing is very bad. So even more so, my point stands. Matchup that matters. They got to step up in that cornerback group for Green Bay. Who's your plus factor in this one?
Yeah, and that's honestly, I mean, Jair is the coverage grade is great, but he's also been in and out of the lineup. That's the thing, is like he's left mid-game. He's kind of fought through a bunch of injuries this season. He really hasn't. When he's in there, he's good, but the availability just hasn't really been consistent this season for Jair Alexander. But anyway, I'm going the other side of things because I'm going to Jalen Ramsey. For the Dolphins, and 83.1 PFF grade, which ranks second among corners. I think we talked about this last week. He's having like the most quiet Jalen Ramsey season ever, and it's like one of his best seasons ever, but like no one's talking about it. He's not talking about it, which is very uncharacteristic of Jalen Ramsey. And then he's got 6 catches, allowing 15 or more yards on 358 coverage snaps played. So he's not giving up anything. He's very stingy. And that's something that this Green Bay Packers offense tries to do and can do. The reason they can get these explosives is, again, because they have so many different options. And yes, they will be without Romeo Doubs now for this game. But that I struggle to think that that's really an issue for Green Bay, given how many other weapons that they have when you talk about Jaden Reed and Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks, even Bo Melton. And then you've got, like I said, Josh Jacobs and then Tucker Kraft. And I mean, I named a full slate of offensive weapons right then and there. And that's not, included. And that's, Romeo Doubs is out. So I do think that Jalen Ramsey kind of being able to be stingy and take away as many of these guys or whoever he's on, force Jordan Love into some maybe situations that he wouldn't prefer. If he's on the guy that Jordan Love really wants to throw to and Jordan has to throw it to somebody else at the last minute. We've also seen Jordan Love take some risks as far as the decision-making goes. And that's not something the Green Bay Packers want to coach out of Jordan Love by any stretch of the imagination. But it can lead to defensive takeaways. And that's what you have to do against this Green Bay Packers offense.
My plus factor, once again, kind of could have been a sort of a matchup that matters. Green Bay Packers right tackle Zach Tom, who is their best offensive lineman, is going up against Chop Robinson, who over the last 2 weeks, Chop Robinson, the Miami Dolphins rookie pass rusher, he has an elite 90.7 pass rushing grade, He has 17 total pressures, and he has over 41% pass rush win percentage. He mostly lines up over the right tackle, which is where Tom plays. And again, this is strength on strength. Like, this is Miami's best pass rusher versus Green Bay's best offensive lineman. So Zach Tom is the big time plus factor in this one, because if he can neutralize Chop Robinson, Miami still has Zach Slyler, and I'm not saying that they don't have anybody else that can get after the passer, but he has been the player who has been causing the most havoc amongst that Miami Dolphins defensive line, which has been playing a lot better as of late. So that's going to be a fun one to me. Zach Tom's the big time plus factor, because neutralizing Chop Robinson and showing him a little bit of veteran savviness to maybe neutralize him a little bit, slow him down, I think will matter a lot in this game. The Black Friday game that we have is a divisional matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. No Gardner Minshew in this one. Broke his collarbone last week, so he is out for the season. It looks like Aiden O'Connell is going to be the starting quarterback for this one. They also have Desmond Ridder, who would play if Aiden O'Connell is not out there. What is your matchup that matters here, Carmen?
Yeah, that, well, and stranger things have happened. It's a division game, but it's really this Chiefs defensive line and obviously Chris Jones against the Raiders offensive line. Pass rush win percentage, Chris Jones, 17.3% leads the Kansas City Chiefs. No surprise there. But the Raiders offensive line now in front of Aiden O'Connell, and it's just kind of been this rotation of quarterbacks all season long. 69.3 PFF grade, which ranks 18th. They're 70.5 PFF pass blocking grade, a lot of P's, 17th, and 120 pressures allowed, which is tied for 8th. So that's, on the better side. And they're going to need to do that against a guy that is just an absolute game wrecker in Chris Jones. And we've kind of seen the Chiefs. I don't know if you can even qualify it as exposed because it's just not. And I'm not actually worried about the Chiefs, and especially, they're going to get to the postseason and then it all starts over. And I'm never going to bet against Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City and Andy Reid in the postseason. But there is an opportunity for some weird stuff. It's Black Friday football. Who knows?
I think the matchup that matters is really, it's more of a long-term thing for me. It's more of, can the Chiefs defense sort of get right here? Because since week 9, so we've had a couple of games here for them. Since week 9, the Chiefs are bottom half in the league at overall defensive grade, pass rush defensive grade, run defense defensive grade, and coverage grade. They're bottom half in the league in all of those categories since week 9. The beginning of the year, the Chiefs defense was just flying, right? I mean, it was one of the best defenses in the league. And I still think they're capable of playing very well, but they've had some injuries and they've just straight up slowed down. Now, is this going to be a trend? You talked about, okay, never wanted to bet against Kansas City once they get into the playoffs. I mean, they've had some, I'll say, defensive matchups that they should have owned over these last 4 to 5 games, over this last month stretch, that they really have not played well with. When you get to the playoffs, you're not playing these, lower offenses. You're playing the best in the NFL. This is a beat up, bad Raiders offense. Now, the Raiders offensive line's not too bad, and I'll get to my plus factor in a second, but it's an offense that you should absolutely take care of business with, especially with it being in Kansas City. So in order for me to feel better about the Chiefs taking the playoffs by storm and continuing to march all the way to a Super Bowl to get that three-peat, I'd like to see them really take care of business against an offense that they should take care of business against. Now, the total plus factor in this one is Brock Bowers. And I want to highlight Brock Bowers because he's having an unbelievable season. Not just a good season, one that is historic, to be honest with you. So he's got 74 receptions right now for over 700 yards, and he's got 6 games left. The rookie record for receptions for a tight end is 86 by Sam Laporta when he was a rookie.
Yep.
Very well within reach to get over 86 receptions for him. In fact, the overall receiving total record for a rookie was set by Puka Nacua last year. It was 105. He's even on pace. If he gets 6 receptions a game for the next 6 games, he gets that. So there's a chance that he breaks the rookie receiving receptions record overall. And then when it comes to yardage, I think it's around like 774 yards, something like that. Mike Ditka, back in 1961, has the record for most receiving yards for a rookie tight end. It's 1,062 or like 74. So it's in the 60s or 70s. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's right. It's below 1,100. Brock Bowers could very well hit that. Now, he's not going to beat Puka Nacua's over 1,400 yards record, but we're talking about records.
I know.
What'd you say?
The rookie tight end records, however.
Rookie tight end records, he could own all of them. And to be honest, there's only been one rookie tight end who has ever won Offensive Rookie of the Year, and it was, in fact, Mike Ditka back in 1961. Yeah. Brock Bowers has a chance to do that. I think that Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, understandably, you can see in the Vegas odds, they're higher because they play the quarterback position. But if Brock Bowers is truly hitting these historic numbers, and Nix and Jaden are a little bit up and down with their teams, depending on if they make the playoffs or not, this guy could legitimately win Offensive Rookie of the Year for the first time in, what's his math, 60-ish years?
Yeah, good call. 63?
63 years?
Yeah.
Pretty special, folks. So. League's been around a long time, so plus factors Brock Bowers in this one, because if the Raiders have any chance at all, it's going to be a big day getting this guy a lot closer to those records. So that's my plus factor.
Yeah, my plus factor was Brock Bowers too. Especially given the fact that we all lost our minds, rightfully so, over Sam Laporta last year, and now he broke a lot of rookie tight end records last year. He broke a lot of rookie records. He broke like every Lions franchise rookie record that you possibly could, and he was second in yardage totals and touchdowns and stuff to Mike Ditka. Broke or I guess surpassed Gronk's rookie numbers, which I actually talked to Gronk about at one point, and he was like, he's not going to get to double-digit touchdowns, and I was like, oh, and then he ended up doing it. But Brock Bowers, that's the one thing that is interesting about Brock Bowers is you're talking about this incredible level of production that hasn't actually translated to the end zone. He only has 3 receiving touchdowns this year. Mm-hmm. And that's why he was my plus factor for this game, because I'm like, get him into the end zone more. Have these stats pay off for you more. Trust him in the red zone. Trust him in the end zone, please. Because I feel like he's been doing so much work. He leads all qualified tight ends in receiving first downs with 38 of them. He's the 3rd highest graded tight end, again, among all qualified tight ends, rookie or not, behind only George Kittle and Trey McBride. I need to see a payoff for this kid. I want him to get the more of the scoring chances here. And again, in an offense that is just so beat up, this is your bright spot. Feed Brock Bowers specifically in the end zone.
I'm with you. I think that's the only way they stand a chance in this game. And again, if they do, I think that we're talking about Brock Bowers being a lot closer to some of those rookie records. The staple part of every outfit is what? It's a great hat, right? You got to have a versatile hat. You got to have a go-to hat. Now, sometimes you can have a go-to hat and it can linger a little bit too long, right? You can go to it, smells a little bit, got some sweat stains, just a little beat up, right? It's a grow. Yeah, you don't want to keep a hat around that's like that. Well, when you have a melon hat, MELIN, you don't have to worry about that at all. They've got all different types of styles, and the best part about it is all of them are 5 times more durable than any hat that is out there. All different shapes of heads. They'll fit anybody. Like, I have a tiny head. I'm just gonna admit I got a tiny little head, and sometimes it's very difficult for me to find a hat that like I love that actually fits me. For example, listen, I went to a barbecue place like not too long ago, and there was a hat there. It was fantastic. I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm buying this hat. I didn't even really try it on. Bought the hat, got back, and I looked like I'm like a train conductor, like an old, like that's how big the hat is. But honestly, I got these melon hats in the mail not too long ago, really almost a month ago. I've been wearing them so much ever since. And they just form just right to your head shape. They're so comfortable. You feel them. You could feel the durability that they're going to last forever. They're great. We know that we're getting into the winter as well. They got a thermal collection, which will help your head stay warm during these cold times. And whew, babe, we got it. We got a big cold front that is coming through. And let's just say, fall and summer, long gone. It's about to get real cold around here. So make sure you got a good hat to make sure that you can combat that cold. Go check them out. Melon, MELIN.com. These are the world's most durable hats. They got all different types of styles for you, no matter what your lifestyle is, in which you put on a hat, whether it's a workout, whether it's going out to social events, whatever it is. Go check them out. MELIN, and put these hats to the test yourself. I love mine. You're going to love yours too. 1 p.m. games on Sunday. Let's get into the Sunday slate here. Chargers, Falcons. Chargers coming off a tough loss against the Baltimore Ravens at home, taking on a Falcons team that in the NFC South is weird, right? I mean, 1 second it looks like everybody's just like, oh, yeah, Buccaneers are winning that division. Yeah, it's not even close. And then the Falcons kind of take over and people are just like, oh, yeah, Falcons, driver's seat, not even close. And now we're like, now we don't exactly know. And I think the Falcons need to have a good game here against a team that's been more successful than I think a lot of people thought would be the case in Harbaugh's first year. But what's your matchup that matters here in this one?
Yeah, it's certainly further along than I think even the Chargers really realized they were going to be, given the fact that Ladd McConkey is wide receiver 1. And as much as I love Ladd McConkey, I really don't know if he is a true wide receiver 1, or if you would feel more comfortable if he was more your second receiver and you had another guy at that wide receiver 1 position. But regardless, that's who you have. That's who Justin Herbert, who likes to catch Justin Herbert's passes almost exclusively, apparently, because every other receiver seems to be letting Justin Herbert down. So Ladd McConkey versus the Falcons corners. McConkey has an 80.8 PFF grade, which ranks 13th among wide receivers. 35 catches gaining a first down, that's 12th. So you're looking at like top 15 numbers here. And again, this is a guy that should probably be a wide receiver 2 at this point in his career. Not saying he can't get, his ceiling, he's reached his ceiling by any stretch of the imagination. But Falcons corners have been doing relatively well this season. Top 10 grades as far as PFF 69.5, that ranks ninth. 69.6 coverage grade in particular, that ranks ninth as well. So in a kind of get right game for both of these teams, who's going to win out? And if you can stop Ladd McConkey, I do think that, and especially we don't know what's going on with J.K. Dobbins quite yet, you could stop a really large part of this Chargers offense and keep them from scoring a ton of points. Now, their defense is going to hope to keep you from scoring a ton of points, which, kind of went out the window in the Har Bowl this last weekend. But I do think that Falcons corners, if you can shut down Ladd, that's going to really go a long way in kind of limiting what the Chargers are able to do offensively.
I just love saying the Har Bowl. I don't know why. It's
somebody asked me if I'd rather say Harbaugh Bowl or Har Bowl, and I'm like, it's not even close.
Yeah,
it's obviously Har Bowl.
You'd much rather say the Har Bowl. The Harbaugh Bowl is almost like too much of a tongue twister in there.
Right, exactly. Try saying that 5 times fast.
I can't. I barely even talk. I don't even know why I'm on the show. Matchup that matters to me. Chargers run defense versus the Falcons rushing attack. The Falcons want to run the football. They have the second highest rushing grade in the NFL, right behind the Baltimore Ravens. And when I say right behind, I mean like by 0.1 in terms of the grading system. Falcons have an elite 92.1 rushing grade this season as a team. 15th in EPA per rush, so not as high when it comes to the overall efficiency, but it's something that they like to do. They run block very well. It's a staple part of what they want to do on offense, especially with Bijan Robinson as the guy they are building that entire game plan around. It's always a good idea when you're getting the ball in his hands. The Chargers defense, through the first half of the season, was one of the highest graded defenses in the league and had the lowest points per game in the NFL. And I'm certainly not saying that they're fraudulent. Like that's the wrong term, but they've sort of come down and they've sort of, gotten a little bit closer to the middle of this. Chargers in run defense specifically, especially coming off of a game where they really let the Ravens do what they wanted to do on the ground.
Yeah.
The Chargers are 13th in run defense grade at 69.5 this season. They're 12th in EPA per rush allowed. So better than right around the middle of the league. They're in the top half of the league, but it's not quite this top 5 run defense graded team that we thought they were even 4 or 5 weeks ago. So they're not like totally shut down, but it is a really nice test for them. It is a really nice opportunity for them to say, no. We can defend the ground game. Like, we're going to get back to it. The Ravens got us. We'll tip the hat to them. We'll say, okay, you did a great job. We're going to get back to it. Jesse Minter and his group are going to get back to it this week. And I'm very interested to see how they fare against the 2 best rushing attacks in the NFL back to back. And they're clearly they were not ready to face the Ravens the way that they needed to. How do they go back to the drawing board and attack the Falcons or contain the Falcons rush game a little bit differently? So to me, that's the big time matchup that matters there. What the Falcons want to do on the ground versus how good are the Chargers at run defense really? I think we get a better look at this, because if it would be 2 bad rush defense weeks in a row, then I think we could safely say, like, all right, the early high run defense grades from them were a little overinflated against some teams that might just not be able to run the ball well. But if they bounce back in a good way, then we can go back to talking about this defense as like, all right, this is a defense that is very capable. They could be a top 10 defense in the NFL, and they could kind of ride that into the last month of the season and see what happens there when it comes to them making a playoff push.
Yeah.
Your plus factor in this game. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, real quick on that too. I do think that it'll hold a lot of weight if this Chargers defense can't kind of rise to the occasion against the Falcons rushing attack, given the Falcons rushing attack is more straightforward than what the Ravens present. When, yes, you have Bijan Robinson, who's one of the best running backs in the league, and then Tyler Algier, but you don't have a quarterback factoring into that. And that's the difference between the Ravens rushing attack and everybody else's, is that Lamar Jackson absolutely factors into the rushing attack, even though he's been rushing a little bit less this year, and leaving a lot of that up to Derrick Henry, given how prolific Lamar Jackson has been in the passing game. But when you have to factor in a quarterback in the rushing attack, that changes the dynamics completely, and it does stress your defense in a different way than if it's just the straight running back position, which is what you're going to get with the Atlanta Falcons. So this is an absolute opportunity, I think, for the Chargers to say, no, we're fine. We're fine. And if they don't, then it's going to carry a lot of weight in saying, this defense maybe, like you said, not fraudulent, but maybe not as good overall as we probably gave them credit for initially. But my plus factor here, I think, is still going to be Justin Herbert and whoever catches his footballs and his passes. But it's Justin Herbert specifically off play action. And I really wanted to highlight how good Justin Herbert has been in play action this season. 93.8 PFF grade. That ranks first in the league. His 9 big time throws off play action ranks second. So this is the way that Justin Herbert wants to get this offense going. This is the way Jim Harbaugh wants to get this offense going. And again, I think it's going to be very important when you consider that J.K. Dobbins could very well miss this game. It's going to be all the more important to kind of, again, make this offense a little bit more vertical when you can't just run the damn ball.
Yeah, I think the Chargers' rush attack is a plus factor in this game because they're still working through, and I'm saying they're doing a bad job of it. I think that they are doing a good job of it, but continuing to understand the balance between running the football and passing the football when Justin Herbert is passing the ball as well as he is. Because remember, at the beginning of the season, Justin Herbert was, he was hurt. He was still nursing that leg injury. Right. And so, he didn't really have that mobility. He wasn't 100%. And they were running the football a lot. When you look at weeks 1 and weeks 2, they had 166 rushing yards, and then over 200 rushing yards as a team in those 2 games. So we went, all right, here we go. This is what Harbaugh's identity is going to be. It's running the football and its defense. And then Justin Herbert started playing like an MVP. And you go, okay, well, hold on here. We don't want to run the football that much because we don't want to take the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands. So the balance, what does it look like there? Because even though they've had lower rushing outputs over the last couple of weeks, week 10 and 11 specifically, week 12 against the Ravens, not a great EPA per play when it came to rushing the football. But week 10 and 11, so 2 out of the last 3 weeks, they've had 2 out of their last 3 highest EPA per rush games of the season. So they're figuring out how to be much more complementary with this rushing attack. Can that continue? That's a big time plus factor with me because some coaches just think it's a volume thing, right? Some coaches just think, all right, we got to get these guys a certain amount of carries, but it's trying to find that balance, especially when your quarterback is playing as well as Justin Herbert is. I actually think they're doing that at a pretty good rate, and it's a defense against the Falcons that they should be able to attack in that regard. Steelers-Bengals, divisional matchup here at 1 p.m. This one is in Cincinnati. Basically every game from this point on is must win for Cincinnati. I think that they could still lose like one game down the stretch and make the playoffs, but basically anything outside of one game. And I think it's going to be over for them when it comes to a potential playoff run. They're just too far behind the 8 ball. What's your matchup that matters here and what it feels like almost a do or die game for the Bengals?
Yeah, I keep joking that the Bengals are like the mafia from The Godfather or Goodfellas, where like just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Like, they keep doing this to me where I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't want to give up on the Bengals because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're just so much fun to watch. And they're on a tear. And Joe Burrow is playing some of the best ball of his career. And you don't want to waste that. But I have to kind of think about the fact, too, of like, even if they do make the playoffs, what is their viability? Because I keep thinking this isn't who the Bengals are. But they keep showing us week in and week out that this is kind of who they are. And it is a do or die game because it is a division game. You have the opportunity to make up some ground here, but it's not going to be easy. And especially when I think this Bengals offensive line in particular, you look at it, and earlier in the season, they were kind of maybe bottom of the top third / like kind of right at the average mark. That's no longer the case, at least grades wise. When you look at pass blocking, run blocking grade, 59.4 PFF grade overall, that ranks 29th, 63.3 pass blocking grade, slightly better, but that's still 23rd, 52.6 run block grade, which is 31st. And like, this is not a team that's been able to run the football. And I think the offensive line has a lot of the reason why. Mm-hmm. And that's really not helping out Joe Burrow. Their offense is one-dimensional. He is having to be Superman, him and Jamar Chase. And that needs to stop. You need to do something, and you need to do it quickly because the Steelers' defensive line, we know how good it is between Cam Hayward, who leads the Steelers in pressures, I'm going to keep shouting that out because the man is 35 years old and he has 38 pressures this season. And then TJ Watt at 29. I mean, this is a tough unit to go against, but you're going to have to kind of show up against them and help this Bengals offense be as multiple as possible to, again, stress the Steelers defense in as many ways as you can. And we just haven't seen that out of the Bengals offensive line. It's just kind of deteriorated as the season's gone on. And it's kind of like the same old story. So I'm trying to find any way to still believe in the Bengals because I want to. But I think that's just my bias because it's getting increasingly harder.
Well, the team is very fun to watch, and I think that's why they're really tough to give up on, because you've got overtime games, you got close losses, and you go like, wow, I can't wait to, continue to watch this Bengals team. And, we might get to the end of the year and the playoffs roll around and you go, wait a second. Okay. What are we not watching the Bengals anymore? And so that is the matchup that matters 100%. I think that the Steelers defensive line versus the Bengals offensive line is absolutely the matchup that matters, because they have a defensive line full of guys in Pittsburgh that could absolutely take over games, whether it's Herbig or Cam Hayward or Keanu Benton or obviously TJ Watt as well. Like, they've just got so many fantastic players along that defensive line that can be all sorts of fits. And I'm especially worried about Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, because the Bengals interior offensive line has been bad. I mean, that has been an area where we talk about the Houston Texans interior offensive line being something that's holding them back. It feels like the interior offensive line right now is really holding the Bengals offense back because they're giving up so much interior pressure. And whether it's Cordell Volson or Ted Karras or Alex Kappa or just honestly like a combination of the three, teams are just attacking them in ways that they're not ready for, and they're not ready to pick each other up, and they just don't have that chemistry right now. I don't think they're all terrible offensive linemen. I really don't, but they're just not playing as well as a group as they could, and it's a really bad week to go up against a defensive line and the one like the Steelers. On the plus factor side of things, I'm going to stick on the Steelers defense, and I'm going to talk about Joey Porter Jr., who had a 39.6 coverage grade last week against the Cleveland Browns in that snow game, had 5 targets, gave up 5 catches, over 50 yards, and if he's not playing better, holy cow, that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are going to be able to take advantage of that. And so, to me, the poor performance from Joey Porter Jr. last week cannot carry over into this week, because if that same performance is what we get out of JPJ, it might be a 200-yard game for Jamar Chase, like we have already seen once this season. So to me, Joey Porter Jr. is either the plus factor or the minus factor, however you want to say. Like, he's either going to be able to hold up against these 2 really good wide receivers, or he's going to be a reason that keeps the Bengals into this game and might get them into the 30-plus point range and potentially be victors here in this one. So that's my big-time plus factor there with Joey Porter Jr. What about you?
Yeah, you hope that had more to do with the fact he couldn't see the ball in the snow and the fact that Jameis Winston really didn't get the memo that you're supposed to act or play differently in this.
He did play differently. He played better.
He just kept playing it. I know, and it kept working out. I was like, usually if your receivers can't even see the ball, because clearly the corners can't see the ball, I don't know. But it worked out. It worked out, and it was fun. But I'm going to the other side of things. I want to focus a little bit on the Steelers' offense and Russell Wilson's deep ball in particular, because that is the biggest differentiator between what Justin Fields brought to this offense early in the season and what Russell Wilson has now been able to do. And the fact that he's made this offense multiple vertical 95.8 PFF grade on throws of 20 yards or more. That's ranked second in the league. 9 big-time throws with 0 turnover-worthy plays. So Russell Wilson is slinging it, and he's making the veteran decisions that you expect out of somebody like that. I think there was so much made about, all right, is Russell Wilson going to be the answer? Are you better off starting Justin Fields anyway in the beginning of this season because of what we saw from Russ in Denver? I said it multiple times where I was like, we're going to need to see the Russ of 3 years ago or 4 years ago if this is really going to be a difference maker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And lo and behold, we're seeing a lot more, not quite, but we're seeing a lot more of that guy from 4 years ago than we are of what we saw in Denver. And I can't say enough about how effective that's been. And now we're seeing so much offensive production out of a team that was run the ball first, play very conservatively offensively, and let the defense take over literally ever since Ben Roethlisberger. I think that's the last time we really saw really fun offense in Pittsburgh. And now we're seeing it again. So Russell Wilson, deep ball prowess, how that happened, how the Bengals corners and secondary kind of contend with that. That can be a huge difference maker.
Texans, Jags. Jags coming off a bye week. Looks like we're getting Trevor Lawrence back in this game. I can't remember the exact quote, but Doug Peterson said that, they took a deep dive into everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
Oh man,
not the deep dive quote. Not the deep dive quote. Can't mean good things.
If the Jags lose this game, they might clean house like the day after.
We thought that last week.
But like this is it, right? I mean, like Trevor Lawrence is coming back. He's coming back off of injury. You had the bye week to prepare for this and make some changes. If they lose this game to the Texans, which is tough because the Texans are I don't want to say a great football team because we'll get into that in a second, but like they're a good football team going up against the Jags, which are not a good football team. I really do think that they might make a move on Friday if they don't at least look decent in this football game. What's the matchup that matters for the Jags looking decent in this one, Carmen? What do you got?
It's how they contend with Nico Collins and against these Jags corners, because the corners specifically have a 62.3 PFF grade, which ranks 20th in the league, bottom third type stuff here. And we know that Nico Collins, what he means to CJ Stroud, what he means to this Houston Texans offense. 21 catches, gaining 15 or more yards, which ranks 8th in the league despite all of the time that he missed. That just kind of gives you some frame of reference for, again, how effective Nico Collins can be, and then what he brings to the offense kind of opens so much up for the rest of these guys, and it makes CJ Stroud feel so much more comfortable. I do think that, yes, we've seen, I hesitate to call it regression because I'm firmly of the belief that progress is just not linear. And we saw a really great season from CJ Stroud in his rookie year, obviously. But I think when we look back on it, some things kind of get overlooked in the sense that actually you needed the Jaguars to implode in order to get into the playoffs. There were ups and downs in CJ Stroud's first season that we don't necessarily talk about because on the whole, it was very impressive. That's all true, but that didn't mean that there weren't going to still be some bumps in the road. CJ Stroud is still a very young quarterback, only in his second season. Just because he had an overall good season to start his NFL career does not mean that it's just going to continue to go up and up and up. There's going to be, some, again, it's not regression, especially with the injuries that this Houston offense has dealt with. But once guys get a feel for how to kind of play you, then you have to start adjusting and stuff like that. And that's where that roller coaster comes in. So I do think that they're on an upswing now. Again, now that Nico Collins is back and has been back for a little while, and limiting Nico Collins specifically is going to limit that Texans offense overall. The Jaguars have to do that.
I think the matchup that matters is Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson going up against the Jags offensive tackles in this one. Not only is it obviously paramount that Trevor Lawrence is standing upright to make throws and move the ball down the field, just overall, I mean, you're going up against the most productive edge rush duo in the NFL. 19.5 sacks between Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. That's the most of any duo. They are second and fourth in the NFL respectively. So it's not like, okay, well, Hunter's got 14. It's like it's not like the Wayne Gretzky stat where it's like Wayne Gretzky and his brother are tied for the most points in NHL history. And it's like Brent Gretzky had like 5 and Wayne Gretzky had, like 3,500. So it's not one of those stats. They're very close. They both have a good amount of sacks. I believe Hunter has 10. I believe Will Anderson has 9.5, or maybe it's 10.5 and 9. They're very close, and they're both top 5 in that category. So they're both playing well. The Jags traded Cam Robinson before the trade deadline. So I think some people might look at that and be like, oh, that means the Jags offensive tackles are terrible. Not necessarily the case. Walker Little and Anton Harrison have actually been playing pretty well as of late. Above 70 PFF grade are those two offensive tackles, and so they're actually playing pretty well. They are the highest graded offensive lineman, I believe, that the Jags have on that offensive line, and so it's actually a good test of kind of strength on strength here. Now, I'd lean giving the edge to the Houston Texans edge rushers just because of how productive they have been, but Harrison and Little have been able to hold their own. So it's not going to be as I wanted to point this out because, again, with the Jags trading Cam Robinson, I think people would have thought of that and gone, oh, wow, this is going to be catastrophic for Jacksonville. maybe not. They might hold up a little bit better than you think. So to me, that's a big time matchup that matters in neutralizing those two guys. And I already talked about this, so I'll just shout it out pretty quickly. The Texans' interior offensive line is the biggest area that's going to hold them back from achieving what they want to achieve, not only in the regular season, but the postseason as well. You look at last week alone, their two offensive tackles in Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, both of those guys above 70.0 overall blocking grade. The other three, Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, Shaq Mason, all of them below 54.0 blocking grade. And so it's such a major difference. The interior offensive line is not playing well together, not blocking individually or even as a group. And the offensive tackles are holding up their end of the bargain. It's got to look better before the Houston Texans get into the postseason. And it's not even a guarantee that they're going to win this division. I mean, the Colts are sitting there. Yeah, they've been disappointing this year, but Colts are only 2 games back from where the Houston Texans are in the win column. So they've got to play better overall, not just to be a better postseason team, but to make that postseason, to make sure that they win this division. Because if they aren't going to win this division this year, that will be a major disappointment given how the rest of these teams in the Colts and the Jags and the Titans started versus how the Houston Texans started. So to me, that's my matchup that matters in plus factor. Your plus factor in this one is what?
Yeah, my plus factor is also the Jaguars, the offensive line, just in general. Given they have been pretty decent, and again, I think that's a good shout out to say like, oh well, they traded their left tackle. There's no way that they're good. That's not necessarily true. They've only allowed 83 pressures in pass protection, which ranks as the 4th fewest. And this Texans defensive line, like you said, with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. I mean, this is why the Texans went and got Danielle Hunter. Their pass rushing grade ranked 7th overall for that along that defensive line, which obviously includes those 2 guys. So I do think that that's how the Jags fare offensive line wise. Again, can you protect Trevor Lawrence? Can you kind of get this offense going and let it be effective against a Texans pass rush that is very formidable? That's going to be, I think, the biggest singular kind of one-off where you're like, all right, that's what's going to sway this game.
This one is a game that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
Cardinals, Vikings. Because Vikings, obviously a house. Their record is fantastic. They're on, I don't want to say cruise control to the postseason, but certainly in a driver's seat spot to get into the postseason, even with the Detroit Lions being in this division and likely winning this division. They're playing really good football, and they're hosting a team in the Cardinals, which has been very hot and cold, and I'll get to that in a second. But they are a team that any given week, they can put up a ton of points against you. They can come together and play pretty well defensively, even though it's a younger group. I'm just very intrigued to watch this football game. What's your matchup that matters here with these two teams?
Yeah, I want to go again to a fun one. But actually, before I get there, I just want to like really talk just about what happened this morning. Daniel Jones going to the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, I've been talking all season and even last season just about how incredibly good of a coach Kevin O'Connell is. Mm-hmm. You look at what he did after Kirk Cousins went down last year, playing live action Madden with backups in some cases that had just arrived and didn't know the names of their receivers, a la Josh Dobbs. And then this year, what he's done with Sam Darnold, how excited I was when I knew that when they selected J.J. McCarthy, even before he got injured, just because I knew that they were going to be able to ease him in and really develop him, given that Kevin O'Connell is the driving force behind that. You also have Josh McCown as their quarterbacks coach. But then to see Daniel Jones go to Minnesota to be on their practice squad, to go to what I joked on Blue Sky was the Kevin O'Connell school for kids that can't QB good and want to do other good things good. It's just another testament to Kevin O'Connell and how good of a coach he is, and I just want to shout that out.
No, he's
clearly
awesome.
not going to be a factor in this game, but Daniel Jones, you made a really good call. But Marvin Harrison Jr. against these Vikings corners, we talk a lot about how blitz happy Brian Flores is and the simulated pressures and just kind of the pressure disguises and all of the stunts and stuff that they pull up front. And then you also talk about the safeties and what Harrison Smith is able to do at his big age. And you look at the corners, and I mean, Cam Bynum, so much fun going into the Celebration Hall of Fame this year, given just on the Parent Trap alone, that was phenomenal. With Josh Metellus, but they have a 66.9 PFF grade, Vikings corners do, which ranks 13th. So it's kind of more towards the average or the mean as far as corner as coverage goes. And then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who again is just so paramount to getting Kyler Murray comfortable and this offense going. You have Trey McBride, obviously, who's kicking ass for them as a tight end. But I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. having those 12 contested catches, again, giving Kyler Murray that person that can just go up and get some of these footballs, and then 17 catches gaining 15 or more yards. That's the vertical kind of stretch of this Arizona Cardinals offense, and you have a little bit of an opportunity against this Minnesota defense that, at least in coverage, is a little bit more average than they probably want to admit.
I'm going to wrap up my matchup that matters and plus factor sort of into one. The matchup that matters to me is James Conner versus the Vikings defensive line, and really just run defense overall, because I'm of the believer that Kyler Murray is great. And I'm going to get to Kyler Murray in a second. Trey McBride is great. I like Michael Wilson a lot. Obviously, Marvin Harris Jr. is a really good player. They've got a potential potent passing attack. The Cardinals, to me, have always been best when they are operating under, we've got to get James Conner going. Like, he's got to be the main identity of what we have here on offense. And the last 2 weeks, 43 rushing yards on 20 carries for James Conner. So it has clearly been a failure for them. Now, 2 weeks ago, they were really good. And then last week against the Seattle Seahawks, they're not good at all. Score 6 points. So it's a perfect opportunity for them to sort of get back to the run game basics, in my opinion. For them to go, okay, we are going to make sure that we set up James Conner to win this football game for us. The issue is the Minnesota Vikings have by far the best run defense grade in the NFL as a team this year. 87.1. That's 5 points higher than the second place team. This team knows how to defend the run. And so, to me, a successful Cardinals football game will be allowing them to get the run game going and to play strong in the run against a run defense team that is pretty dang good at what they do. Because on the flip side of things, the plus factor to me is Kyler Murray. Now, some people might look at that and say it should be flipped. You know, Kyler Murray has to be the bigger emphasis, and James Conner needs to sort of be that plus additional factor. I think it's the other way around, and it has to be because of how Kyler has played this season. Kyler has as many multi-big-time throw games this year as he has 0 big-time throw games this year. It's 4 apiece. It has absolutely been when he is hot, man, he is hot, and this offense looks fantastic. And when he is not, like we saw last week, it's a struggle for them to move the football. So how do you even things out a little bit more? How do you raise your floor as an offense? You got to be able to get James Conner going. The last 2 weeks, they have not been able to do that. This week would be a great sort of get-right game in that category, but it's bad timing for that to be the case. So to me, it's sort of, I'm wrapping all this into one. For the Arizona Cardinals to be able to go into Minnesota and win this football game, it's got to be a more efficient game from James Conner, even against a tougher rush defense. And it's got to be one of those better Kyler Murray games. His floor cannot be as low as what we have seen from him so far this season. So that to me is sort of my all-in-one answer to that, which now we go to your plus factor to round things out.
Yeah, my plus factor is Sam Darnold in the red zone in particular, or just kind of
you sure it's not Daniel Jones in the red zone now?
Well,
you know? the battering ram himself. People are going to be so mad when he vultures Aaron Jones touchdowns down the stretch for fantasy football.
My God.
I don't know if it's going to be this week or not.
Don't wish that. Don't wish that for people.
No, I'm not wishing. I'm predicting. I'm doing my job.
You're putting that
Carmen.
in the universe.
I'm doing my job. If nobody else will say it, I've got to say it.
I want to, there's kind of been a rash of kind of more boneheaded Sam Darnold plays in the red zone. But I mean, just in general, this season, Sam Darnold is tied for the most red zone turnovers with 14, I believe.
Yeah.
It's not great. And over the last 3 weeks in general, Sam Darnold is also tied for the most turnover-worthy plays with 6. So he's putting the ball in harm's way a little bit more than you'd like, more than he was. It's resulted in kind of the Minnesota Vikings being pretty mediocre as far as red zone scoring goes. They rank 15th at 56.25%. So that's something that really has been the difference maker in a lot of these games for Minnesota. Now they're coming out on the right side of things for the most part, and you have the talent around you that can kind of pick you up if you're Sam Darnold, and you have a coach that still believes in you and all that wonderful stuff. But I would really love to see Sam Darnold kind of put a lid on it, not let this get too far out of control and not really put your guys in some sticky situations where, you're beating the Chicago Bears by like a last minute or overtime field goal and stuff like that. I mean, that was a game that they probably should have lost. And now you're going into a game where I think the Cardinals, as inconsistent as they kind of been overall on the season, this is a game that the Minnesota Vikings could very much be in danger of losing, but it is at home, so there's that.
I'm just really, I said it, I'm excited to watch this one because there's a variety of different ways that this game could go, and these are two teams that certainly have playoff aspirations in the NFC, and both would, it goes without saying, but like both would really love to win this game against a good opponent. So I think this is going to be a fun one. Colts at Patriots is the next game that I want to get to. Patriots hosting this one, coming off of a tough loss against the Miami Dolphins, where just really never felt competitive for them. The Indianapolis Colts are coming off of a loss to the Detroit Lions, but it feels the opposite. The Colts lose that game 24-6, but that game was a lot closer than the final score indicated. And I think a lot of the penalties and the lost yardage due to penalty plays were a big reason why the Colts didn't have as many points on the scoreboard as they did, even if the play remained completely the same. What's your matchup that matters here in this game?
It's not necessarily a head-to-head matchup, or I guess maybe it is a head-to-head matchup. It's the two quarterbacks.
I have the same thing. I have the same thing.
I have Drake May and Anthony Richardson, and who's kind of better, who plays their game a little bit better. Anthony Richardson, I liked what he did against the Lions, which was, those 10 rushing attempts for 61 yards. That's something that, you want to incorporate in Anthony Richardson's game, because we all know he's got a cannon for an arm. But 82.0 overall grade the last 2 weeks, 83.1 passing grade, 4 big time throws, 3 turnover worthy plays. So that's, but that's kind of who Anthony Richardson is. And at the 63.0 rushing grade. So if you can combine kind of the rushing threat with Anthony Richardson, and then have him also, be a threat deep, which is kind of like when he picks his spots and all that stuff, you hope that he can pick his spots pretty well, and then kind of, again, rely on some of his rushing ability or his scramble ability. That's something that's going to, I think, something that Anthony Richardson can take going forward. And we are not giving enough credence either to Drake May's athleticism and how he can get himself out of trouble when it comes to, I was so nervous about Drake May starting this season behind this Patriots offensive line. For good reason too. Mm-hmm. But then I wasn't giving enough credence to something that I really liked about Drake May coming out of North Carolina, which was he is so much more athletic than we want to give him credit for. And he can scramble around. He's not a running quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but he is a guy that can get himself out of trouble, throw off platform, do all that kind of stuff. And I really you can see that this season, and it's why he's been able to hold up behind a Swiss cheese offensive line for the most part.
Yeah.
And I also think that the offense in New England has helped him as far as the play action stuff. You look at his numbers off play action, 31 of 41, 253 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does have 2 interceptions on those, but that's something, again, that, play your game, Drake May, play your game, Anthony Richardson, and which one works out better? Because for all intents and purposes, Anthony Richardson is basically a rookie this year. And these are 2 young quarterbacks that you want to see succeed. Who can do it better in this game? That's what I'm watching.
Yeah, May should be able to attack a Colts secondary that has been very up and down this season. Not to say that Jalen Jones and Sam Womack and Kenny Moore haven't been great at points. They certainly have, but May has the ability to take advantage of them with some big time throws. And we haven't seen those over the last couple of weeks. Last 2 weeks, May's got 0 big time throws. He got 2 turnover worthy plays, but total this season, 5 big time throws, 9 turnover worthy plays. The turnover worthy play is obviously the thing that you don't want. Anthony Richardson over the last 2 weeks, though, specifically since coming back in the lineup as a starting quarterback, 82.0 overall grade, a 83.1 passing grade, 4 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. And like you said, I think a lot of people look at Anthony Richardson and they just go like, oh, he's just a running quarterback, just a 63.0 rushing grade. And so a lot of why he has a high overall grade is actually what he is doing in the passing game. And I think people will look at some of the lower outputs for him and the low completion percentage and say like, whoa, how are you coming up with those numbers? Well, we track every single play. We grade every single play. Sometimes those plays are negated via penalty. Sometimes those don't show up on the common stat sheet. And for Anthony Richardson, there were a lot of those plays last week in particular. There were plays of 20 yards, 21 yards, 19 yards, 30 yards that were all called back due to penalties. And that doesn't change the fact that he was able to complete those passes down the field. It's just okay, yeah, all right, a holding penalty there, whatever it was, ends up calling it back. You're not allowed, that's fine. But that doesn't change the fact that he delivers a good ball, he completes a pass, and he gets it where it needs to go. So he has been playing better since he came back in the lineup. And I think a matchup of 2 young quarterbacks who bring you that dual threat ability is going to be a lot of fun to watch. My plus factor in this one is Laiatu Latu, the rookie edge rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, he looks like a superstar in the making. Over the last 2 weeks himself, 90.2 pass rushing grade, 2 sacks, 8 pressures, 19.6 pass rush win percentage. It looked like he was really just acclimating to the NFL size, strength, speed combination through the first 4 to 5 weeks of the year. But he was my edge one last year for a reason. He was a top 10 player for me and somebody that I could absolutely see leading a defensive line in the NFL. We are well on our way at that point. And even though Jared Verse came out of the gate very hot for the Los Angeles Rams, I think Laiatu Latu's got a sneaky chance to still win Defensive Rookie of the Year because of the production that he is going to put out over these next 5 or 6 games. So Laiatu Latu is my plus factor here for how well he's been playing. Who's your plus factor here?
It's the Patriots offensive line, as it is pretty much every time Drake May steps
trying to block Laiatu Latu, yes.
Trying to block Laiatu Latu. So yeah, that's very complimentary. But they are dead last in PFF grade at 49.9. And why this matters to so much, other than the obvious, is also because you look at Drake May's passing stats beyond the sticks. So some of these kind of longer throws that are going to keep you on the field, that are going to progress you down the field. And he has 8 touchdowns on those past the sticks kind of throws, or throws over 10 yards. But he also has 5 interceptions. So you want to be able to give him time to kind of process what he's seeing downfield and make good decisions and all that kind of stuff. Because once Drake May actually gets inside the red zone, he's been doing phenomenally. 15 of 25, 86 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. But that's not a whole lot of yards. That's not a whole lot of attempts when you consider now that Drake May has played quite a few games, and it's because you're not getting into the red zone situations. And so in order to do that, this all kind of hinges again on the offensive line, allowing Drake May the time that he needs to make those throws, to get the ball down the field, and to not turn it over.
We had a comment in the chat. Steve said, do you account for the quote, because of the flag, the plays were able to be made and not without the flag, kind of a question, going back to sort of Anthony Richardson's unrealized gains or unrealized yards. And obviously that's true. One of them I think was offensive pass interference. The other one was a holding call. I actually think 2 of them were holding calls, but still Richardson's able to make those plays. So yeah, all right. Like, could he have been tackled? I'm not trying to take that away. That's why the plays were not allowed in actuality, but he still then attempted the pass, completed the pass, and it was a great throw. Like, he still gets credit for that being a great throw. So that's sort of where we get with that. Yes, obviously the play could not have been made without the flag being there when it comes to maybe like offensive holding or something like that. But the offensive holding doesn't change the fact that Anthony Richardson was able to wind up, was able to put the ball exactly where it needed to be, and hit a explosive big-time throw down the field. So you still want to be able to give him credit for that. That's, again, PFF's motto: every play, every game, for every single player. So that's sort of how we're trying. That's why we exist. That's why we're trying to make sure that we contextualize everything involved. But that includes, obviously, part of your question of why you brought that up. So I just wanted to shout that out. Jets and Seahawks, next game that we're talking about here. Seahawks coming off a big win. Jets in the news for all the wrong reasons, it feels like, every single week. What's your matchup that matters here for the Jets?
It's the one fun one, I think.
Okay, the one fun one.
I guess it's 2, technically, because it's Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams against Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. because I mean, I really like the Seahawks side of this the most. I think the secondary, their young secondary is just, they're so much fun. Devon Witherspoon is just one of my favorite players, young players especially. And if you look at catches gaining 15 or more yards, Garrett Wilson has 16 of them. Devontae Adams, 8. That needs to be part of this offense with Aaron Rodgers if the Jets are going to have any sort of production. But I think these young corners are going to make it hard. So Devon Witherspoon, 73.1 PFF grade, which ranks 16th among qualified corners. And the two of them combined tied for the most forced incompletions for Seattle. So that's really fun. And I think it's going to be really fun watching them go up against a young receiver and then a veteran receiver and how that all works out. I don't see a whole lot of fun in this because I don't see a whole lot of fun in the Jets rest of the season. Because you're right, they're in the news for all the wrong reasons. And it's all very dramatic. And I keep having to stop myself from saying I told you so every other chance I get. But
oh man, were you correct, Jets hater? Man.
Oh,
I wanted the Jets.
I'm not a Jets hater.
You want the Jets to be good. You just didn't think they were going to be good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because of the man under center, because I had the opportunity. I mean, I had my own bias against him, I'm sure, given the fact that I grew up a Bears fan and he terrorized the Bears for so long. But then I actually got to cover him too. And it was one of those things where like my journalistic kind of critical thinking skills kick in every time I listen to him talk, especially for more than 30 seconds at a time. And it's just like, wait, you just said this, but then you said that. And that's contradicting this, and that's contradicting that. And what you said today was not what you said yesterday. It's just this whole roller coaster thing. And so when this all happened with the Jets, and I know how much kind of power a guy like Aaron Rodgers has, and rightfully so for what he's done in the league, I didn't see this really going well for the New York Jets. But I'm sorry, Jets fans. I'm sorry. I did not want that to be the case. I want you to have a good team to root for. You deserve it. But
my father-in-law and that side of the family is diehard Jets fans, and
I'm sorry.
I wish I want happiness for them.
Yes,
as do many of the Jets fans out there that I'm friends with. I really do.
I really want happiness for them.
And it's not. One of the matchup that matters here is the Jets cornerbacks. Well, the real matchup that matters before I get into my plus factor is just the Jets versus motivation. I'm literally going to echo sort of what you said there. What is there to play for at this point? This is a disappointing season. Your head coach is gone. Your general manager is gone. You're already talking about the next guys in the building. You're basically playing for the guy next to you, but I'm not here. I don't want this to sound like I'm like calling any players out, but like it didn't feel like they were playing for the guy next to him before.
Right.
And so now you really basically like have no motivation. I don't know. They're coming off the bye week. Maybe it was a reflective thing. Maybe they were all really able to come together and say like, hey, this year did not go the way that we needed it to, that we wanted it to, but let's finish strong. We got a lot of guys that are coming back next year. Let's end the year on a right foot and let's really be able to hit this offseason run and let's go for the Super Bowl next year, because that's probably what they're telling themselves. If they're able to do that, fantastic. But to me, they are a team that's sort of teetering on, if things start to or continue to not go well after the bye week, you start losing focus, you start losing motivation, and that's what you don't want as a football team. So to me, it's just getting up for the rest of the season, the regular season for the Jets, that I think is going to be really important with 6 games left for them. My plus factor is Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's the best slot receiver in the NFL.
By far.
55 catches, 647 yards, 32 catches, gaining a first down, all coming from the slot, all first in the NFL. He's going to be going up against Michael Carter II, who has not had a good year. I mean, just overall, I think Isaiah Oliver's been a slot defender for them as well. But even the guys on the outside, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, have not had great years. Reed's had a little bit better of a year than Sauce has had, but just coverage overall has been really poor for the Jets. And it's hard to get it's hard to get yourself to think that this team's going to be great. And the Seahawks are still vying for a playoff spot, still vying for a division title. They're more motivated, I think. And yeah, I don't know what the Jets have left in the tank. I did not mean for this segment to like sort of be like an anti-Jets segment. I just don't know what they have left in the tank at this point. Yeah. It feels
it's not even
very
anti-Jets, because we're talking about how we want happiness for Jets fans.
It feels very lethargic, like the whole situation and the whole outlook for this team. How they play in this game will tell you whether they could go 500 down the stretch or if they're about to go like 1-5. Like, and how they play in this game to me means a lot. So that's the big takeaway for me. What's the plus factor here for you?
Yeah, I mean, if you suffer another loss, I can't imagine that's going to help as far as motivation goes.
Right.
And you're right. The Seahawks do have everything. I mean, the NFC West is anybody's game at this point. And Geno Smith has been extraordinarily productive despite not having the cooperation of his offensive line. Geno Smith has the second most passing yards of any quarterback behind Lamar Jackson this season so far. But the Seahawks offensive line has allowed 166 pressures in pass protection, which is the second most. So we are seeing, you are seeing the effects of that when it comes to Geno Smith's quarterback play, where, the ball's kind of going in harm's way, and he has 12 interceptions. It's not great, but can you also blame him when you're really not being given the time if you're Geno Smith behind this offensive line? So can this offensive line, again, fare better against what at one point was a bright spot for this Jets team, which was their defensive line? How motivated are they, though? Going back to this whole conversation we just had, can the Seahawks offensive line take advantage of that? I think that's going to be a huge plus factor insofar as it's just going to help Geno Smith and the Seahawks.
Titans Commanders. Titans coming off a big win against the Houston Texans. Happy for the Titans. I really am. Titans fans, I don't know if you're happy about that or mad because it kind of hurts the draft position. Maybe you want them to tank as much as possible, but it's nice to see the team playing well. And I'm going to get into a couple of plus factors here for them that are actually playing well on the defensive side of the ball. But I'll start with you. What's your matchup that matters here for Titans Commanders?
Well, speaking of little bright spots, Tony Pollard is a bright spot for the Tennessee Titans.
He has been.
800 rushing yards. That ranks 7th in the league.
Quietly a top 10 rusher.
Right. Quietly a top 10 rusher. And he has 4 rushing touchdowns. I think, again, there's an opportunity to uptick that a little bit against the Washington run defense, which the Commanders' defensive line, again, something you could maybe take advantage of if you're the Tennessee Titans and this ground unit. 53.4 PFF grade overall for the Commanders' defensive line. That ranks 30th in the league. The issue, though, is that the Titans' offensive line overall ranks 31st in PFF grade at 56.6, which incorporates both pass protection and run blocking. So that's something that, who's going to get the better of that? And can Tony Pollard kind of be not so quiet about his production against this Washington Commanders team that we've seen, again, some ups and downs from them, I think. But, to have a chance in this, Tennessee's going to have to run the ball.
I'm going to go with a specific matchup here. Sometimes we go a little bit,
more broad,
bigger, and we go, more broad. Yeah, like D-line, O-line, whatever.
Right.
Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah.
Versus Jarvis Brownlee Jr., the rookie corner for the Tennessee Titans, who
love that.
Up and down, right, as it often is with rookie corners. But last week in particular, 83.5 run defense grade, really nice in run defense, 67.5 coverage grade. He had 1 interception. He had 2 forced incompletions. He did have a touchdown, 91 receiving yards allowed. So it was truly an up and down day. He got himself a pick. He got his hands on the football for some forced incompletions, but he also gave up a handful of catches. He's just a really aggressive corner. Something I noticed in him when I was watching him at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama last year. Something that really got him on my radar. That I was like, damn, okay, I think that this guy's got the confidence level and the play style to be able to be a difference maker in the NFL. And we're seeing flashes of that here as a rookie. He's going up against Terry McLaurin. McLaurin, 492 receiving yards versus single coverage. That's the 3rd most in the NFL. And so those guys specifically going head-to-head against each other, I think is going to be fun. Now, it's not like Brownlee's going to play shadow coverage against McLaurin, and every single time McLaurin's out there, it's going to be Brownlee that's lined up against him. But when those two guys match up, I think this is going to be a fun one because similar sizes. McLaurin's not like a much bigger receiver. I think Brownlee's going to be able to handle McLaurin for how big he is and how he wins more as a route runner and his shiftiness and his speed and that elusiveness. I feel like that's an area where Brownlee's going to think that he could be a little bit over aggressive on how Terry McLaurin plays and how he could defend him. So that matchup in particular, I'm really looking forward to. Can Brownlee Jr. have a really good day against one of the better wide receivers in the NFL? I think that'll be a really nice, I don't want to say capstone because it's not finished, but like it'll be a really nice game to look back on and be like, okay, yeah, I handled that correctly. I was able to hang with one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. Or flip side of things, McLaurin had just 15 yards receiving last week before that Hail Mary bomb that got them. Did they go up? Were they up at that point? Mm-hmm. I can't remember where they were. But anyways, they hit the Hail Mary bomb. Basically, it was an 86-yard pass. And before that, Terry McLaurin was doing nothing. That Jaden Daniels and McLaurin are going to want to make sure that that's not the case this week. So he's going to be looking his way early and often. How Jarvis Brownlee Jr. plays against him is going to be a fun matchup. What's your plus factor here for this one?
It's Jaden Daniels, but it's him continuing to take care of the football because he ranks third in turnover-worthy play percentage, 1.6%. That's behind just Lamar Jackson at 1.4%. And Bo Nix also at 1.4%. So these rookies kind of prioritizing taking care of the football. And you love that because you also see, I think with Bo Nix, there's been a lot made given that he's got a conservative kind of offense that he's running. You're not asking a ton of him. That's opened up a little bit over the recent weeks, and you can see the development coming along under Sean Payton. That's all wonderful. It's the same kind of story with Jaden Daniels, though, whereas early in the season, his average depth of target was like the fourth shortest in the league through the first 4 games, and now it's up to 8.4 yards, and that ranks 20th in the league. It's tied with Josh Allen, the likes of Josh Allen and guys like that. So he is pushing the ball down the field, but that turnover-worthy play percentage has still stayed down, and that is so monumental when it comes to a young quarterback getting off on the right foot, creating a good foundation to kind of build off of all that kind of stuff. That's something that you want to see Jaden Daniels continue to do. And I do think that this is something that he has an opportunity to do against this Tennessee Titans team. He's coming off his 3rd game with an 85 or better PFF grade also. And I think he could make it 4 in this game, again, if he takes care of the football and kind of does what he's continued to do.
Dave so far reminding me that Hail Mary touchdown put the Commanders down 1, and then Seibert missed the extra point. I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot. I didn't mean to bring it up.
Oh, yeah. No, so like that whole window of just like, I was watching another game at that point because everything, like I was watching the Bears game and the Vikings, and it was just like, I thought people were reacting to the Bears tying it up with the field goal and like forcing overtime. Mm-hmm. And then I switch over and I'm like, oh no, there was other weird shit happening. Yep. Weird stuff. God, all right, now you've opened the floodgates. You're telling me I can.
No, you already. You already did it. No, it's twice. It's twice.
I don't know if there's
now
a
it's
quota.
a trend. Now it's a trend.
I don't know if there's a quota now.
Now the show's rated R. Okay, so
sorry guys. Leave it up to me.
Better not bring your kids. Plus factor in this one. I've been around too many
football coaches.
T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons are the big plus factors for me. Literally the big plus factors for me. Titans interior defensive line group, sneaky, right? Like we talked about with Tony Pollard sort of having a sneaky good season. Sweat and Simmons, just the interior defensive line group for the Titans.
T'Vondre Sweat, man.
81.2 overall grade over the last 2 weeks. That's 2nd highest in the NFL. They're coming along, folks. The top 5 in pressure and pass rush win percentage as a group. Titans interior offensive line. Commanders offensive line through the first, I would say, 7-8 weeks of the season were one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Now, not that they're terrible now, but taking a little bit of a step back, haven't been as dominant in the second half of the season. They're going up against an interior defensive line group that's playing very, very well. So it's got to be one of those games where they get back to form. They're able to play really well, especially the interior of that Washington offensive line, because the Titans are going to be coming for them. So that is the plus factor.
It's so interesting because week 1, when they played the Bears, I talked to some of the Bears offensive linemen about the Tennessee Titans defensive line and T'Vondre Sweat in particular. And they all told me that guy's going to be a dude. Like, he is so strong, and just give him a little bit of time to kind of develop his pass rush moves and develop his hands a little bit more, he's going to be a problem. And sure enough, that's exactly what we're seeing. Like, he had the brute strength coming into the season and coming into his rookie year, but now you see that like he's really developing, and it's, again, like you said, very quietly a good unit.
Yep. It's very true. There's some things that school doesn't teach you, right? And like how to handle the financial world appropriately is sometimes one of those things, right? We're taking all sorts of classes. I don't use algebra anymore. Could have very well used a financial class. And that includes how to set up your family for great financial success, including your kids. Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents. It makes it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. It's called a UGMA account, okay? While kids cannot invest while they're minors, this UGMA account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments plenty of time to grow. You can share your child's unique gifting link with friends and family. So like instead of maybe gifts that they're going to outgrow or things like that for like birthdays, special occasions, all that, maybe they want to invest in something like, hey, all right, we'll throw them a little bit of money. You can put it in this fund and they can use it for buying their first car, buying their first house, starting a business someday, or even like stuff that's a little bit earlier, tuition, summer camp, books, school activities, whatever it is. Look, it's all online, super easy to set up. It could take you as little as 5 minutes, and you can start investing with as little as $1 a day. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help their families. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. This is a paid promotion by the UGMA product and not for investment advisory services. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Custodial services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Terms apply. Learn more at meetfabric.com.
Do you remember when that read was first on the rundown and somebody spelled it MEAT, and I was like, what the hell is meat fabric?
It's true. Well, listeners of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast know that the Meat Fabric Award is going to be an award that we're going to give out at the end of the year to probably the best trench player. It's just got a lot of meat on the bones. That's all I'm saying.
This should be called beef fabric then.
Now we're just creating awards out of nowhere. So maybe you'll have to join the show for it. You'll have to join the award show for us.
I absolutely would love to. This is a take that my fiance and I have, and I can't even take credit for it. It was his take, but I completely and wholeheartedly agree with it, where we need to overhaul the NFL honors system and 100%. Make it like college, where we name each position group award for like an infamous player. So like the, Jerry Rice award for the best receiver or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And that way we can get rid of like, all right, MVP is always a quarterback, offensive player of the year is usually a receiver. Like that's
right.
Whatever. Like you can now give the proper credentials to each position group, and then again incorporate the offensive line and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a really easy fix, and more awards can't be a bad thing for the NFL. So that's my hot take.
And it means a lot more when you put somebody's name on it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you don't want to embarrass yourself by like giving it to the wrong guy. It's like, man, because you feel like you're letting the guy's legacy down. Whoever the award is named after. So maybe we can take it a little bit more seriously.
Like, could you imagine like the Joe Thomas award for like the best offense? Like, I think that would, you want to like do these guys proud.
Right. Exactly. This isn't a bad idea. I think
it's a great idea.
We might have to get Dave on the show and make sure that we flesh this out correctly. But I do think it's a great idea. Get in front of the right people. That's what we need to do. 4 p.m. slate starts with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers.
The surging
Bucks coming off what'd you say?
Surging ? Carolina Panthers.
That's what I was about to say. Look, the Bucks, no doubt about it, win on the road against the New York Giants last week. The Carolina Panthers, they say that moral victories don't exist in the NFL. I think I watched one last week. I think I watched one last week.
If anything qualifies last week.
With everything that I have watched the Carolina Panthers go through over the last 2 years, for them to come within 3 points of the reigning, defending Kansas City Chiefs, and for Bryce Young to look as good as he did last week, which we'll get into a little bit deeper, that's a moral victory in my opinion. Whatever. What's your matchup that matters here now that the Panthers are going to try to string 2 in a row against a divisional foe in the Buccaneers?
It's the one that I'm watching from now until the end of the season because it involves Mike Evans and versus JC Horn. Mike Evans missed some time. Mm-hmm. He's got some ground to make up if he wants to have an 11th straight.
Doesn't he have to? Isn't it like 100 yards or something? What's the average now?
He has to average 99.5 yards per game from here on out to get to 1,000.
Casual, very casual.
Very casual. We know that Mike can do it. Also, if I trust anybody to understand the brevity or the gravity of this,
Baker Mayfield.
It's Baker Mayfield. It's absolutely Baker Mayfield. Yeah. Also, who do I trust to just feed Mike Evans the ball with reckless abandon?
Right.
Also Baker Mayfield.
Right.
So,
I mean, look, it's 99.5 yards per game, or
like a 300-yard game,
or 2 300-yard games.
Right.
It's pretty simple, actually. Just 2 300-yard games, and he'll be right there. I'm not going to put this past Mike Evans, like I said, and Baker Mayfield, but that starts again. Well, I guess it started last week, and he only had 68 yards. And I'm like, that's not going to cut it, Mike. Nope.
So Mike Evans, JC Horn this season among corners, 56.2 coverage grade. Tied for 77th, so maybe there's a little bit of an opportunity. 8 forced incompletions, 6 catches, allowing 15 or more yards on 376 coverage snaps. That's not a whole lot. Mm-hmm. But, again, those 50-50 balls, the ones that Mike Evans just loves, going up to get, the contested catches, that kind of stuff, he's got 31 catches right now for 403 yards. So, let's go. I think that's over, it works out to over a 13-yard per reception average. 13 catches gaining 15. Yeah.
He could do that.
Yeah. 13 catches gaining 15
JC also needs a big time bounce back game.
Yeah, I don't like that.
He's going to be very motivated because he didn't play particularly great last week.
Right.
And the rest of the team obviously was close. I think he's going to be very motivated. If Mike can get over 100 yards receiving against JC Horn, I mean, you might have a realistic chance. Because for him to average 99.5 receiving yards the rest of the way is an extremely tall task. So the chances are very low. But if you could do that against JC Horn in an opportunity where he's going to be as motivated as ever with them being at home and then playing the way that they did last week, that would go a long way into telling you, I think more importantly, how healthy Mike Evans is. So that is definitely a big-time matchup there. My matchup that matters, Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey are playing really well as a duo on the interior. I just talked about T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey are playing great as well. Last week, Vea, 79.9 pass rush grade, 26.1 pass rush win percentage. Kancey, 73.1 pass rush grade, 17.4% pass rush win percentage. The Carolina Panthers interior offensive line and just offensive line in general has been better this season, but this is a formidable foe for them to try to get in front of and block because, Bryce played really well last week, but if you can get interior pressure on Bryce Young and make him escape the pocket and make him throw on the run, that is an area where at the beginning of the season, at least, he really struggled. I think he was better at that at Alabama. So if he's playing with more confidence now than he was at the beginning of the season, maybe we get to see a little bit more of that and have more success there. But that does bring me into the plus factor, which has to be Bryce Young. I don't know if you were going to bring up Bryce Young, but one of us had to because this is the story, right? For as well as the Bucs are playing, and obviously the corners being back and healthy, and how Baker Mayfield played last week, and how Bucky Irving is running the ball, right? I mean, all of these things certainly matter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not trying to say they don't, but Bryce Young's presence and what he was able to do last week, that was the closest thing to Alabama Bryce Young that we have seen yet in the NFL. 21 for 35, 261 passing yards, had a passing touchdown, 2 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. But what I love the most, how he passed against single coverage. In single coverage situations, a 90.6 passing grade with 4 big-time throws last week. Previously, Bryce had been afraid to attack single coverage the way that he needed to, genuinely giving his wide receivers a chance in tight coverage. That was not the case last week. He was incredibly confident and most importantly in those single coverage situations. So he's the plus factor because if he plays the way that he did last week, this is going to be a fun game.
Yeah, and you saw, talking about how it looks like he's more confident, you saw him get more confident as that game went on, which seems like the exact opposite of what you'd expect against the Kansas City Chiefs. But you look at his second half passing stats in particular, 11 of 17, 86 yards, 3 of his 4 big time throws came in the second half. And he had 0 turnover worthy plays in the second half. So you talk about that growing confidence. Can you take then that momentum from the second half of that Chiefs game where you did take them down to the wire? Can that spill over into a division matchup that is going to go a long way as far as pride? Of course, it's Dave Canales going against his former team now. There's a couple of other guys that were on that Bucs coaching staff last year that are now going against them. So there's a level of familiarity there as well. Is that going to play into this? But it hinges on if Bryce Young can stay confident against what will be a formidable pass rush when it comes to especially that interior, like you mentioned, in Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey, our dudes.
We'll stick with the NFC South to talk about the Los Angeles Rams traveling to New Orleans to try to fight off the voodoo that has been the Saints turnaround this season.
Well done. You're doing real well with the transitions today, Trev. I really
thank you. I appreciate it. I'm motivated to get to the Thanksgiving food. What can I say? All right. So the Rams, I'm interested. Okay, where are you going with this one? What's the matchup that matters here with you? Because I think there's a couple of different angles that you can attack this with the Saints sort of playing on the hot streak that they're in, winners of 2 straight. The Rams obviously trying to stay right there at the top of the division, coming off of a bad, I don't want to say bad loss, but it was a sizable loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, the Eagles really put it on them at 37 points. So just overall, a matchup that matters, where are we starting with this one? Because I think we're going to go a couple of different directions.
Yeah, I mean, you could have really established that you were the force to be reckoned with in the NFC West if you were to have taken down the Philadelphia Eagles at home. That did not happen. When it's stuff like this, though, I go to the trenches because that's the type of person I am. And you look at the Saints offensive line, which has Eric McCoy back and is playing a lot better on the whole, despite, I think Lucas Patrick is injured. I don't know his status for this game. But you look at them against the Rams defensive line, which we've talked about at length this year, that though they are young, though they are reeling from the loss of Aaron Donald to retirement this past offseason, are they really? Because while it's not been a one-to-one kind of plug-and-play player, because how could you possibly do that with Aaron Donald, you have a lot of young guys that are doing some wonderful things for you. Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, they lead the Rams in pressures right now, 48 for Jared Verse, 36 for Kobe Turner. You got Byron Young with 34 right there, Braden Fisk right there with 34. I mean, these guys are all kind of clustered at the top, and it's created this kind of rotation there that is really hard to contend with. And this is going to be a test for the Saints offensive line, which is healthier now. And Derek Carr has been pretty solid behind them this season when he's been in 86.7 PFF grade, 4th overall, 87.5 passing grade, 3rd overall. Saints 30 completions, gaining 20 or more yards, ranks tied for 21st in the league. So there's some kind of ground to be made up there. Are they going to get the chance to do it, or will the Rams defensive line have something to say about it?
No, I think that this is the biggest matchup of the game. There's no doubt about it, because when the Saints offensive line has been healthy and all out there, at least for the most part, especially with McCoy back, I should say, over the last 3 weeks, 70s grades like across the board. I mean, the offensive line is just playing better, whether it's run blocking, whether it's pass blocking. They're playing really well as a unit, and I think that it's no coincidence that Eric McCoy in the middle of that offensive line is a big reason why. Rams defensive line, they've been playing really well until they went up against the Eagles offensive line last week, and I wonder if that was sort of a shock to them, like a cold water on the face of like, oh, okay, we were playing really well, and then we went up against one of the best in the NFL, and we weren't ready for it. I think they're certainly going to be ready for it against the New Orleans Saints. So you mentioned a couple of the names there for the Rams. They've definitely got to show up and be a little bit better, but it was guys like Bobby Brown and Kobe Turner and Tyler Davis and even Jared Verse last week that Byron Young too, I think just were not playing well. Braden Fisk, basically the only guy who graded well against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's just got to be better amongst that group. And so I think that is certainly a matchup that matters. Rams wide receivers versus the Saints secondary, moving on from Marshawn Lattimore and oh my goodness, what was it? Who's the corner who is out for the season with the leg injury? Alontae Taylor.
Yeah,
Taylor, who is now out, who is now out for the year. So it's like, man, those two wide receivers, if you don't have the corners that are ready for it, I mean, they're going to cook. We even saw that last week with how well those guys were able to play, even in the garbage time touchdown for Cooper Kupp. So to me, it is that Rams defensive line versus Saints offensive line, but I think the Rams wide receivers versus the Saints secondary, certainly after the trade deadline and the Marshawn Lattimore trade, matters a lot here as well. Plus factor here, what do you
got? This is actually something for both teams. It's the money downs. It's the ones that matter most. It's third, fourth down. It's red zone efficiency. It's all that kind of stuff. Who can be better? Because both of these teams kind of have struggled a little bit when it comes to third and fourth down conversions. Rams are at 35.7%. That's 27th in the league, so not great. Saints are at 40.5%, which is 15th, very average. Red zone touchdown efficiency too. Rams 51.3%. That ranks 23rd. Saints quite a bit better, 60%. That ranks 8th in the league. So top 10 numbers there for them. But who essentially can be better and convert, stay on the field offensively, convert that into offensive production, and ultimately score points. Breaking news, guys. The team that scores the more points wins the game.
I was wrong. It wasn't Alontae Taylor. It was Paulson Adebo. Adebo was the one who went. I couldn't remember which one it was. It was Paulson Adebo. No, I do. I agree with you. I think that how the Saints in particular finish in the red zone, because to me that's the biggest plus factor in this one is, can the Saints still stay hot in the red zone? I think that this is a flawed team in certain ways. I shouldn't say flawed, inconsistent teams in a lot of ways. Not, I think the Jekyll and Hyde of the season sort of highlights that around their injuries, but they have been able to still stay pretty relatively efficient when it comes to the red zone, and Clint Kubiak's done a really good job there. And I think how the Saints play in the red zone is going to be meaningful in this one. Eagles-Ravens, the final 4:00 game that we have here.
Very excited.
Both of these teams coming off of huge wins, primetime wins. Now in the 4:00 window here in the afternoon on this upcoming Sunday. Your matchup that matters, Carmen. What do you got?
I want to see AJ Brown against these Ravens corners. Brown burst single coverage, 554 receiving yards, which is the most in the NFL. And then the Ravens passing defense, they have allowed the most passing yards, 3,569 to be exact. 22 passing touchdowns allowed. That is third most. 50 completions, allowing 20 or more yards. That is second most. So they are prone to explosive plays, and that is something that AJ Brown does very well. So who gets the better of that? Can Ravens pass defense kind of step up a little bit more? I'm very interested to see if Roquan Smith ends up playing for the Ravens while not necessarily pass defense. I think, especially early on in that game, though the Ravens did end up winning, I do think that they felt the effects of Roquan Smith not being in the middle of that defense, just in general, that throws a lot off. And that's not something that you can afford against not only AJ Brown, but then another matchup, I'm sure, or what's going to get into my plus factor is Saquon Barkley. Also, I mean, this Philadelphia offense just has so many ways to beat you, but so does the Ravens, which is why this is going to be a really fun game.
The matchup that matters to me is sort of the same thing, because I've said this multiple times this week because I thought the line was fantastic when Chris Collinsworth, the boss man, said on Sunday Night Football that the Eagles offense feels like layups and threes, right? The layups are handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley and it's a free 2 points, and the threes are the deep shots to A.J. Brown. Right now it feels like this offense is the Golden State Warriors, right? Where they have almost a guaranteed three-pointer every time, and then whenever they want to take it into the paint, they got a guaranteed two. That's how it feels watching the Eagles offense. And if you take away the threes, then this all of a sudden starts to become an offense that you can beat, that you can outscore. And AJ Brown has yet to really he has yet to really be shut down for a consistent period of time. It feels like it's only a matter of time before he catches a deep pass. And so how the Ravens defend that, particularly the fact that they have been the worst in the NFL at doing so, can they hold up against a team that they know wants to do this against them? I think it's one of those things where it's like the Eagles are going to look them straight in the eye and say, we're throwing it deep. You know it. We know it. Everybody here knows it.
Right.
Stop it. And I think that's going to be a major point in whether or not the Ravens can end up winning this football game. On the other side of things for the Philadelphia Eagles, my plus factor in this one is Cooper DeJean, because when you look at him in the slot, 78.8 slot defense coverage grade so far this season. I think how he plays against Zay Flowers in particular is going to mean a lot in this, because when you look at the Ravens stats, there are some times when you could look at a stat sheet and you could tell how a game goes. And I can almost look at a stat sheet and sort of tell you, like, okay, is this towards the Ravens game plan? Do I think the Ravens won this game? It's not always that I could do that. But when I see that the Ravens ran the ball as well as they did against the Los Angeles Chargers, and the fact that Zay Flowers got more than 60 yards receiving, I went, okay, there we go. Like, that's the compliment that you want to see from the Ravens. And just like the Ravens are going to want to shut down the deep pass portion of the Eagles offense, if Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean can stop Zay Flowers or limit Zay Flowers, maybe 50, 45 or less receiving yards in this game, then the Ravens become a little bit too one-dimensional. And they then keep up with a very potent Eagles offense. So to me, DeJean is a rookie going up against one of the shiftiest, fastest slot receivers in the game, and Zay Flowers is going to mean a lot in this one. Who's your plus factor?
Yeah, I went with the obvious one that we just kind of have to talk about, because I want to highlight both of these guys really, but more Saquon Barkley or just whoever runs the football better. Because Saquon Barkley has now overtaken Derrick Henry for the most rushing yards right now. 776 rushing yards after contact too, which ranks second behind Derrick Henry. So they're kind of like flip-flop and stuff like that. But Saquon Barkley, 53 rushes, gaining a first down. That's third. 29 rushes, gaining 10 or more yards. That's first. 7 rushing touchdowns of 10 or more yards. That's 3 more than any other player. 5 rushing touchdowns of 20 or more yards. That's 2 more than any other player. 3 rushing touchdowns of 40 or more yards, which ranks first. So Saquon Barkley, a little bit more prone for the explosive rush than what we've seen out of Derrick Henry, though both of these guys, it's totally splitting hairs between the two of them. Which one runs better and gives their offense more production? I think that's kind of what you can boil down to who's going to win this game. And that's kind of what I think of as the plus factor being.
Sunday Night Football, it's the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Buffalo Bills. Feels like two teams going in opposite directions here.
Sure does.
Although it didn't feel like that was going to be the case going into the season. It looked like this is going to be one of the best Sunday Night Football matchups. But, man, just injuries for the 49ers mounting, and the Bills are just playing some really damn good football. What's your matchup that matters here for this game?
Yeah, I'm still focusing on some of the positives for the 49ers, although I believe Nick Bosa is going to be back. Do we think so? I don't know.
If he is, it's a hip injury, and like that's tough. And like Brock, I don't think Brock Purdy was throwing on Wednesday. I'm looking it up right now.
I don't think Brock Purdy is in play for this.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Was not throwing this week, so it does not look like we're going to get Brock Purdy in this game.
Well, my matchup that matters is really the 49ers defensive line, then presumably without Nick Bosa. Versus the Bills offensive line, because the Bills offensive line has allowed 96 pressures allowed in pass protection, which is the 12th fewest, tied for the 12th fewest actually with the Ravens. And the 49ers defensive line has done well pass rushing wise, top 10 numbers, top 10 grade, tied for 9th in grade with the Broncos, which is good company to be keeping, but how effective can they be? If your best player is not a part of that. But I mean, there's more that factors into this than just Nick Bosa. And I do think that, again, it's almost an issue, and it's weird to say this because it's not as dire as the Jets by any stretch of the imagination, but your motivation here, when you have all these injuries, you have an excuse. So are you going to kind of succumb to that excuse? If you're getting a little philosophical here, are you going to succumb to those excuses and be like, well, we don't have our starting quarterback. We don't have our starting, our best pass rusher. So like, what can you really expect of us at this point? Or are they going to come out swinging? And I think that that's going to manifest most in the trenches.
That's a very TikTok motivational edit of you,
Right?
like, oh, you got all these excuses, and then some guys just yelling at you like, so what? And it's like
So
somebody,
what?
like
Yeah.
jumping rope in the dark, before the sun is up or what, and it looks cold or whatever. Like that's basically what the 49ers need at this point. Maybe that's what Kyle Shanahan's gonna do. Yeah, Nick Bosa not practicing on Wednesday either, so I don't know if you're getting him in this one, and even if you are, it's a hip injury. That's tough. Bills offensive line, I talked about this is two teams just going in different directions. They're humming, man. I mean, the Bills offense feels as balanced as the Lions at this point. I don't know if it's quite as potent, but it feels as balanced. You got a quarterback that you're comfortable with the ball in his hands at all times. You got a really good rushing attack. You're comfortable throwing to a myriad of different wide receivers and just pass catchers in general. So I'm with you. The matchup that matters is if the 49ers defensive line, who does not have a defensive lineman other than Nick Bosa, who has a pass rush win percentage above 13% this season, if the defensive line is without Nick Bosa again, and they are giving Josh Allen and this Bills offense all the time they need at home to operate the way that they want to, I just don't think you're going to be able to stop them enough. And that was a big worry. I mean, I go back to just a couple of games that the 49ers have had throughout the season where they have really struggled. Like the Cardinals game stands out to me, where it was like, man, it was just the defensive line could not get after them, and they ended up losing that game 24-23. And really, that was a game that they had in hand. And there have been just a couple of other performances, obviously, like the Chiefs game that they lost, certainly the Seattle game that they lost as well, where it's just like the defensive line was not good enough in that game, and you're running up against a buzzsaw of an offense with the Buffalo Bills, who, man, the Bills coming off a bye week. I don't think they had a game last week, right? Yeah, they are coming off a bye week too, so some extra rest. They have won 6 games in a row. They're rolling. It's a bad time for these two teams to be matching up against each other if you are a 49ers fan.
Yeah.
The plus factor for me is on the opposite side of things. On the Buffalo Bills defensive line, it is Gregory Rousseau. Now, looks like they could get Trent Williams back this week. The offensive line for the San Francisco 49ers was not good. No Trent Williams. Still just 10 pressures allowed, so it's not like the floodgates opened, but it was overall, there were low pass blocking grades just overall for the offensive line. And Greg Rousseau, what a year he is having. Talking about quiet superstars, 87.1 pass rush grade, 18.4% pass rush win percentage, 51 pressures this season. Rousseau could be a monster in this game, especially as somebody that the Bills can rotate around that defensive line and get very creative with. So Niners offensive and defensive lines, we talk about that being such a healthy part of both of their team, of both sides of the ball for them, and why we had such high expectations. But the injuries have just mounted for those two areas of the Niners, and I don't think that they've got the horses to be able to keep up with how the Buffalo Bills are playing. I'm just going to be honest. So Greg Rousseau is that plus factor for me.
Yeah, and especially coming off the bye, you're going to get Keon Coleman back, who hasn't played since November 3rd, I believe. So that's going to be a big boost, too, for this Bills offense. But I do think that, if you have any hope of keeping pace with what you mentioned is a very well-balanced offensive attack, you're going to have a well-balanced offensive attack of your own if you're the 49ers, no matter who's under center. And I think what we were looking for, at least what I was looking for in that Green Bay Packers game last week was, okay, you don't have Brock Purdy. You've got some key injuries. Kyle Shanahan, how do you adjust? We give a lot of credence to the fact that Kyle Shanahan's system with, the kind of the McVay tweaks and whatever is a system that is now run by basically half of the league. And there's reason for that, and it's a good system and all that kind of stuff. But are we really talking enough about how much or how little Kyle Shanahan can really adjust when he doesn't have all his horses?
Right.
And that's something that I was looking for in that Green Bay game, because he was going up against an offensive coordinator who he's besties with, who comes from this system, who adjusts it better than anybody. You look at what Matt LaFleur has done when Malik Willis is under center versus what Jordan Love is doing. And sometimes both of them are under center in one game when you saw Jordan Love get hurt and Malik Willis have to come in. And the vast adjustments that Matt LaFleur was able to do. And then Green Bay goes on their bye week. They come out these last 2 weeks. Their offense has looked tremendously different too. We talked about it earlier, just in the way that they're utilizing Josh Jacobs and the run game and all that other stuff. This is the example of this, how this system can work if you are able to adjust it, no matter who's in, especially under center. We have not seen the same adjustments from the 49ers from Kyle Shanahan. And there is a little bit of fatigue setting in with 49ers fans of Kyle Shanahan not being able to get them over the hump. And I think some of this is starting to get a little bit exposed of the fact that Kyle Shanahan just isn't keeping up with the personnel that he has available. And if he doesn't have all these Pro Bowl caliber players or all pro caliber players, is he really an effective play caller? That is what you need to prove at this point, and you're going to have a hell of a time doing it against the Buffalo Bills defense.
Monday Night Football, it is the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos. Broncos are a team that are really rolling this season. They're great in both trenches. They're good on the defense side of the ball. Bo Nix is playing with a lot of confidence. And the Browns, they're coming off of that thrilling NFL films type of win, as Jameis Winston said that it was. What's the matchup that matters here for Monday Night Football, Carmen?
Yeah, I always kind of default to the Broncos defense because, again, coming into this season, there was so many question marks. And Vance Joseph has this unit just humming.
Playing so well, yeah.
So well. 257 pressures, that's first in the league. 169 quarterback hurries, that's 19 more than any other team.
And that's the pressure is just, I don't mean to like cut you off, but like the pressure is like without a superstar, right? I mean, like, I don't mean that as any slight to the guys in the defensive line. Like Zach Allen's playing well, Nick Bonitto's playing well, like those guys are playing well, but you don't have for example, the guy who I'm about to talk about, like a Myles Garrett, you don't have a TJ Watt, you don't have a Max Crosby, and you still are first in the NFL in pressure. So keep going, I just wanted to emphasize that.
It's so cohesive. And honestly, actually, on the NFL on Fox podcast earlier this week, we talked about what we were thankful for, and I used it as an opportunity to highlight Zach Allen and exactly how much he's meant, because we got a taste of what this unit looked like without him last week. And there was a drastic difference in what he's meant to this team. So yes, he's not the household name that Myles Garrett is, that TJ Watt is, that whoever is, but he means a ton to this Denver defensive line. But they do have production all along it. Second in EPA per play against, second only to the Vikings, and 4.5 yards per play allowed, which ranks first in the league. So they are so stingy. They create so much pressure. You don't necessarily know where it's coming from, again, which I think is playing into why they have so many pressures without having superstars. You don't have one guy that you can really key in on with this Denver Broncos defense. And this Browns offensive line has struggled. So 57.2 PFF grade, that ranks 30th. 54.4 PFF pass blocking grade, that ranks 29th. 970 rushing yards, when you talk about trying to get the run game going, that's the fourth fewest that they have allowed for. It's just, this is a matchup that you absolutely can't exploit, because Denver's defense is doing so well right now, especially up front. And that is exactly who this Browns offensive line is going to have to contain. And then you consider, too, that the Browns are starting Jameis Winston, and we know that he has a proclivity to want to play that backyard kind of football and make something happen, even when it's not there, and you can force him into some really bad decisions if you are this Denver Broncos defense, all three levels, too. I don't mean to leave out the secondary, but that they could absolutely take advantage of kind of the push that this defensive line gets up front.
Yeah, for this one, I'm looking at Myles Garrett, and he's going up against Garrett Bowles, who's been playing fantastic. I mean, since week 9, elite 90.2 PFF passing grade. I mean, a pressure percentage below 1%. That's so incredibly impressive. You got Mike McGlinchey on the other side, not having as good of a year, but a veteran right tackle. And so, he's not going to be fooled necessarily like by technique of what Myles Garrett's going to be able to do. But Garrett is just so imposing. We know that he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. How he fares going up against this Broncos offensive line that is playing like a top 5 offensive line in the league, certainly over the last month and a half. They've been doing a great job of keeping Bo Nix clean and just playing very, very well. So I think that Myles Garrett versus, and in particular, obviously just the Cleveland Browns defensive line as a whole going up against a red-hot Broncos offensive line, which, by the way, Quinn Miners over the last since week 9, so last month, basically, 90.8 offensive grade for Quinn Miners, 88.7 run blocking grade, 83.1 pass blocking grade. He has been one of the best guards in the NFL, and he has been so much fun.
Quinn Miners podcast.
Yeah, I mean, he has just been so fantastic. So giving him his flowers there. The plus factor, it's Jameis, right? the ultimate plus factor in every single game that he plays in. Sure. We're not telling anybody anything you don't know. The Browns offense really was pretty lifeless before Jameis Winston came in as the starting quarterback, and he has the ability to obviously win you thrilling games like we saw last week, but he also has the ability to lose you games. We haven't really seen a disaster class type of a Jameis Winston game yet this season, though. Right. So even though I think the memories of the 30 for 30 year with him and, how, the crazy interceptions that he threw when he was in Tampa Bay, like all that stuff still exists for people. They watched it. It was real. But he hasn't quite been that quarterback for the Browns. Has he put the ball in harm's way? Yes, he hasn't been perfect, but he hasn't been that catastrophic type of a Jameis. And so, right. I don't know. Maybe he's, exercised the demons in that regard. I hope I'm not jinxing him there, but how he plays is obviously a plus factor in this one because the Browns offense just goes as he goes. But I want to shout out actually, I'll let you go first because if you don't mention this, I'll mention it before we get out of here. But what's your plus factor in this one?
It's on the Broncos side of offense, and it's any wide receiver not named Courtland Sutton because
sure.
Bo Nix needs some more help. Devon Bailey, Little Jordan Humphrey got his first touchdown of the season 2 weeks
Bailey's
ago.
been playing better too.
Bailey,
he's getting in there.
Second on the team in receiving yards, but he has like half the total of Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton has, I think, 744 yards, 5 touchdowns this season. Bailey has half of that. So there's a pretty big drop off after you get Courtland Sutton. Troy Franklin has 2 touchdowns as well. So you're just going to need some more some more production out of your second, third, fourth receivers in whatever order that they're in. Figure it out because Bo Nix is developing really well despite everything, and he could use some more targets to really kind of come into his own in this offense to actually be really productive.
I think another plus factor is just the Broncos running back rotation. Yeah. I don't think they haven't been playing terrible. Like Jaleel McLaughlin and Audric Esme last week, both above 5.0 yards per carry average. McLaughlin has 6.3 yards per carry average. But then you go to Javonte Williams, 8 carries, -2 yards on the day. So it's like, I understand that not every running back can play well, but they've got this 3-headed rushing attack, and it feels like, okay, well, 2 of them do well, and then 1 of them does terribly. It's sort of a tough balance when you have that deep of a rotation and you just don't know who's going to show up every single week. It hasn't quite come back to bite them yet, but I'd just like to see some more overall efficiency for the running back room. Like 1 week it was Audric Esme not running the ball really well. Last week it was Javonte Williams. So just sort of figuring that part out. That's to me a true plus factor. Bo Nix is moving the ball well, no matter what, no matter which running back is showing up, which is great, but a little bit more established sort of rushing attack is important because you go up against a team that's really going to put you wire to wire to really play your best. You can't afford to throw a running back out there who's just like not playing well. So for it to be as much discrepancy as there have been over the last couple of weeks with that 3-headed rushing attack, I'd like to see it be a little bit more cohesive and play a little bit better there. So there we go. All 16 games
16
up and down. There it is for Thanksgiving week. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the show as we are on the eve of the holiday. We are going to be back same time next week to, talk about these games that we're about to see in hindsight. And of course, continue to preview the NFL and every game that we have for week 14. For Carmen Vitali, I am Trevor Sikkema saying, have a wonderful Thanksgiving to everybody out there, no matter what you are doing. Enjoy some great food, time with family, whatever it is, and of course, some football too. We will see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in to the PFF NFL show. See you guys next week.